Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
The 2-0. Swinging a drive into right field. It's way back. Gone! Yoshida, a grand slam. For the second time this year, the Macho Man clears them all, and it's 6-0 Red Sox.
Swing and a hard hit ball to deep center field. Backing up is called. He looks up, and it's gone. A long home run to straightaway center field for Paul Goldschmidt. Big fly number 16 for Goldie. And the Cardinals indeed get those 2 runs back, and it didn't take them long. Way to go, Goldie.
No balls and 2 strikes. Pitch. Swing a ground ball hits towards first. It's fair, and it's rolling down the right field line. Beatty's around third. He will score. A pinch hit walk-off single for Luis Guillorme in the bottom of the 10th inning, and the Mets win 2-1.
And a nice play by the third baseman Peraza in the 9th inning, and he drives it to left. His first home run of the year is a walk-off. Touch of all time, Alan Trejo.
Hey, good morning. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Robbie Lula in for Damon Benning this week. Andrew Rogers, happy to have you with us. Well, Robbie, that's one way to do it. One way to get your first home run, a walk-off.
Yeah, no, there's definitely worse ways to go about it, right?
Is there a worse way to go about getting a home run? I don't know.
I mean, if it was kind of
maybe in the structure of home runs.
If it was your first career home run, I feel like an in the Parker would be the crappiest way to get it.
or
like a little
or
league
because
home
not
run,
a lot of people have that claim to fame.
Yeah.
It could be up there.
I mean, it depends on what kind of hitter you are.
Okay.
Like if you're like a Juan Pierre type,
and you get
then an in the Parker
run.
probably makes sense. If you were, a Pete Alonso type, if that's your first home run, you probably don't feel great about it.
Although if polar bears running the bases at great
it'd be
speed.
incredible entertainment just seeing him lumbering around the bases, right? Also to see the chain of events that would have to lead to him getting it inside the park home run. But like for me personally,
like what if Robbie Lula hit an in the park home run?
Oh, I did in I don't know, like literally about like 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Your age, your size today, your first home run in the park home run. Like that'd be impressive.
It would be hard to do without somebody committing an error to allow me to round the bases in that amount of time.
What if it hit the wall weird? And
you'd have to get some funny caroms.
Yeah, like you're playing at.
I'd have to be on an actual.
It's at AT&T in San Francisco. Unhook the trailer.
It'd be like in Boston where it's 420 out to that corner in the triangle, and then it hits the wall funny and shoots over by like the monster, and the left fielder was coming in to try and help, and it shoots right past everybody.
Manny Ramirez takes the cutoff throw out of nowhere.
Absolutely. I would need like Johnny Damon relaying to Manny Ramirez to figure that whole thing out. So, I would need a little bit of help there.
Okay.
Which I appreciate Shane putting a Boston home run in the highlights for me.
Yeah, that's what he does. And he put a Goldschmidt one in there too. I bet on him on the wrong day. I chose him on Friday. Then the game got delayed. They resumed it super late. I thought it would just get pushed to the next day. They ended up resuming the game. He didn't hit one then. And then, we can hit one during the weekend though.
Sure, why not?
Cool. Yeah, Fridays don't count.
I gotta say, I find your baseball betting patterns hilarious, or habits maybe.
You and everybody else.
Patterns. It's like, you're full on degenerate with absolutely. It is otherworldly.
3 or 4 home runs.
Yeah, you do so many props or like first inning over unders or the strangest baseball bets.
Yeah.
I
found a new one too. A new trend. So it's called the 4K parlay.
Okay.
And it's literally what the name is.
Yeah.
4Ks.
Okay.
From the top pitchers, the top strikeout pitchers.
Okay.
In a parlay. Now the odds aren't fantastic. If
Sure.
you do like Scherzer to get 4Ks, well, he's on average throwing 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Well, his odds are probably going to be like minus 450. But if you parlay it with like, a Shohei Ohtani, and then you parlay it with
so how many guys do you have to put together to get like even odds?
Positive odds, probably 6. But 4Ks really isn't that.
It's not,
much.
But out of 6 guys, somebody's probably having like a short outing or get shelled a little bit.
Yeah, you risk the McClanahans of the world leaving in the second inning. Like you definitely run that risk.
I mean, with Major League Baseball, and you have to pick 6 guys to not blow out their elbow in a single start.
Yeah,
like that's the battle
that's
right there.
True. Yeah,
you know what, we ride. That's what I mean. Your baseball betting is wild to me.
I should send you though, because recently I've also been doing the get to plus 100 odds. So whatever that looks like. If I choose Andrew McCutchen to get a hit, and I parlay it with Aaron Nola to get 3 strikeouts and something else, and that's plus 100. Like, is it Andrew McCutchen to get a hit a lock? Who knows, depending on his odds that game. But if I get it to plus 100, then I'll put $20 on it.
Yeah.
If that hits, then the next game that I do plus 100, I'll put 40 on it.
Sure, you just
and
roll.
The next game I'm going to keep rolling it because my investment's $20.
Yeah.
And if I get to like $500, well, then I'll cash out and read it.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know if I haven't gotten to 500 yet.
I was going to say, how many times
I've gotten to 280. I've gotten to 280 before, and I tried to double down to get to that 500 mark, and I lost.
Maybe you should get to like 100
and cash out,
and then you just clear $80 every time you do it.
I don't think you get it.
I don't think you get it.
What if I double down on that 100? That gets
so just double down on 80 though. So take your initial investment out, so you never actually lose money.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So take your 20 out,
yeah.
Put the 80 back in.
Yeah, but then I lose capita as I move on.
Only a little bit though.
But it gets greater though.
You take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward.
Right, but if I lose that 20, that $100 investment becomes like $40 less every time. And then now I'm like $80 less. Now I'm like $240 less.
Well, no, once you get your initial
I keep going up,
once you get your initial investment out, you don't have to keep taking it out. Once you get the original 20 out, you know what I mean?
Right.
So you can keep doubling down after that.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe you just gotta take little withdrawals from your investment.
I know what you're saying. See, that'd be the smart thing.
It would be,
not me.
Well, the smart thing would probably not to be
not to put 4 guys to hit home runs. Yeah, the same bet.
Not to be
$5 to win $1,300.
Absurd baseball prop parlays.
Hey, when another one hits, I hit one last year. When another one hits, you
hit one all of last year
of the home run bets.
Okay,
which is over $1,000.
Sure, yeah.
But I only put $5 down every time.
Okay.
So and I don't bet every single day, and even if I did,
$5 every single day, you'd come out ahead.
I was even. I was even if I
did
did every single day last year, but I didn't. So I was obviously up, but then I lose other bets throughout the year.
Yeah.
So I was pretty close to even last year.
Yeah,
because of that bet. Thank God. Outside of that, it's like I just lost another $5. Oh, there goes 10 down the drain. It is what it is. I do have a future parlay out. So
all right, what do we got?
There you go.
What do we got for the future?
I
love futures.
And there's a basketball line in here. So I was talking with DB last week because I'm like, hey, I kind of want something juicy to root for that's looks like a lock right now, but it obviously could change over time. So the lock right now is this. It's the Colts over 6.5 wins.
Okay.
It is Illinois over 6.5 wins.
Okay, I feel better about that one than I do the Colts.
And the Cardinals over 75.5 wins.
Okay, what are the Cardinals at right now?
I put the Cardinals in there. They were at, I think, 38 wins at the All-Star break.
Okay.
Over the weekend, did they take 2 of 3 from the Nats? They did. So that would put them at 40.
How many games do they have left?
69.
So they need to win 26. That's not terrible.
And the Central, so I chose that one too because if you look at margin of error,
then go 36 and 33.
They probably have the best chance of a lot of teams to have, like the Phillies are another one of those teams, like should be better than they are. Mets should be better than they are.
Yeah.
But the Central's so loose.
Right.
Even though the Cardinals are 11.5 back, you're dealing with the Cubs who are only 3.5 in front of you. The Pirates are a game in front of you. So when you know you're playing those teams again, the Pirates have been on a slump, like on a downward trend. So factoring all that stuff in, I'm like, 75.5. If it's any team to do it in the second half, it has to be the Cardinals. They can't be any worse than they just were. No. And it's not even half, right? The All-Star break is a little further than a little more than half.
Yeah, a little deeper.
So, Cardinals are getting healthier. They're starting to put it together. They're trying to convince me or opponents. I'm convincing myself and the rest of the people out there that, hey, I'm not that. I think through some of my bets.
Honestly, the Colts one is the one.
Don't give me that over there, Shane.
The Colts one is the one that I have the biggest hesitation on.
I was looking for an over, and the over-unders that the NFL has set have been so large.
Yeah.
Like the Panthers are 7.5. Like, what are we doing?
Ooh.
Bryce Young, first year. We really think Carolina's winning 8 games, and I don't want to bet the under.
Yeah.
Like, I hate rooting for things not to happen.
Yeah, betting the under is nobody likes betting the under. It's not fun.
Well, life's too short to bet the under. And so I was going to bet the under for the Rams, which was 6.5. Because I don't think the Rams will win more than 5 games this year.
Okay.
But I don't want to bet the under.
Sure.
So I chose the only over that felt like kind of
reasonable.
All right.
Yeah.
And the Colts seem like that team.
Ooh, I don't know. The Anthony Richardson thing, I don't know, man.
I'm all in on him too.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because he picked up the trash after the symposium?
You know me and picking up trash. I pick up my bet slips all the time.
I don't know. I think he's the furthest of the quarterbacks away from being useful.
See, I think he could be Rookie of the Year. And I said that a couple of months ago because DB gave me that same reaction. And then all of a sudden, reports came out of Anthony Richardson to start. And we're like, all right, so we actually
I think he's going to start. A
lot of people didn't think he was going to start right away.
Yeah.
So that was the big thing.
I don't know about, man, his athleticism would have to carry him a lot of the way because a lot of the other stuff isn't there yet, isn't ready yet.
Well, to win Rookie of the Year, you better win 7 games.
Yeah. I mean, if you're betting the over, you might as well bet on him for Rookie of the Year as well.
I should have thrown that in.
You should have. I mean, come on.
Well,
man.
then I extended the bet.
You got to have synergistic bets there.
I had a short bet, right?
Okay.
So just those 3.
Yeah.
And then I did a smaller bet, but I added in some greater futures.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the Kings to run it back. They were plus 1,000. I know the Suns added.
That's pretty good odds, though. Yeah.
And I know that Golden State,
No, but plus 1,000 for a team that I like those odds. Yeah,
right?
I like those odds.
Clippers should be better. Will they be better?
I mean, if anybody ever actually plays for the Clippers,
right?
That's the $1 million question.
So I added that in, and then the Kings because that was DB's
LA
Kings.
Bet.
Yeah. So we had the Kings squared.
Yeah. Kings and Kings.
Mm-hmm. So
yes.
Maybe I'll be a king.
I mean, I would just add on another one. Let's throw that Anthony Richardson.
I got to go back to the border
Rookie
today.
of the Year now. I mean,
so what am I putting 6 in that same bet? No, I got to.
No, just different. Add I would do a
new 3 person.
Yeah, I would do a new one where you've got if you think the Colts are going over 6.5, then the chances of Anthony Richardson being your Rookie of the Year go up a ton.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
They're very synergistic bets there. So.
Although DraftKings is weird sometimes because they realize what I'm doing.
Oh, and they don't let you do it?
So, no, they would let me do something like that. Okay. I don't know if they'll let me parlay those two. I
can't imagine.
Find it hard to believe they wouldn't. But sometimes they're like, I know Anthony Richardson's odds are, say it's plus 1,000.
Yeah.
To win Rookie of the Year.
Do they mess with your parlay odds?
Yeah, because if you're betting to get 7 wins, then DraftKings if you get 7 wins, then this probably has a good chance of happening. So they'll lower the regular parlay odds, and they won't just parlay those 2 numbers together.
I hate that.
When you do something similar. So I don't know.
You might be able to get good value
that a lot.
You might be able to get
because when I do baseball, it's like,
the same game parlays make sense because they're inevitable.
Right. And so it's like, you think Shohei Ohtani's getting 10 strikeouts? Well, then the under probably hits.
Yeah.
right. And so that's why
I wonder if it's not a same game if they mess with it as much.
That's a good point.
Because same games make sense, right?
Well,
if you
find out.
Are taking the under and Shohei strikeouts, and then you take the Angels to win on the money line, which is always a terrible decision because the Angels. Seems like every time Shohei Ohtani does something historic, it's like, and the Angels lost.
And the Angels lost 2-1.
So, but I bet they're not as bad about it on futures.
Yeah. Okay, so, gosh, the weekend though, outside of betting was eventful for me. Was your weekend?
It was pretty
crazy?
chill.
Okay.
Didn't do a ton, which I like. Had a little downtime, but you were working hard all weekend.
I was all over well, first my weekend started at Cracker Barrel.
Okay.
When was the last time you went to Cracker Barrel?
Somewhat recently, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So my wife and I both kind of like it.
Okay.
So we go, not a ton, but I don't know, once every couple months or something, we seem to find ourselves at Cracker Barrel.
Had a really good server, high school kid. I way over tipped him because he walked up. This is the first thing he said to me. He's like, other than like, what can I get you to drink? We're like, oh, we'll take water. And he goes, do you have a preference on ice? And
Nice.
I go,
okay.
do you have crushed? And he goes, no, I meant like you went little, like halfway, you went
None
a lot.
at all.
And I'm like, nah, just normal ice is good. But when somebody asked me I was like, I've never gotten that question before.
So
I
think there's a trend. A lot of people are going no ice in their water now.
For the reason
I have no idea. It's just something I've
too
noticed.
Cold to go down.
Well, people are soft now. You know this. No,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
I need warm water.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's like a European trend because they don't do ice.
Seems like everything comes from Europe.
Well, they don't do ice in Europe really.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's a European thing, but I've noticed more people go water, no ice. And so maybe he's picked up on this trend in his, serving,
right.
Serving trend meetings and things like that. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to start asking. He's trying to be on top of things. He's trying to get that extra tip from guys like you.
He did get it from me. I tipped him way over. But, I kind of wanted to ask you because Cracker Barrel just doesn't slap anymore for me. Like it used to.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't. So what's a restaurant, whether it's here or wherever, that is always in the back of your mind because of your childhood? Like, this is going to slap. Like, if I go back in 10 years, it's going to be awesome.
Yep.
But it just really doesn't anymore.
Yeah. So for me, I'm not going to hit up any local places because I don't want to be mean. It's usually chains that have that effect for me. And for me, it's Olive Garden.
Okay, I can see that.
So, like when I was a kid,
I don't ride with that because I like the soup and I love their breadsticks.
I think the breadsticks have gotten worse.
Really?
Yeah, because they used to be like these buttery, garlicky, just deliciousness.
Yep.
And now they're kind of just like, here is a stick of bread. And it's like, it's fine.
You don't think it has any?
Not like it used to.
Any of the salt and the butter?
I mean, it's got some, but not like it used to, man. Okay. It used to go hard. I still kind of like the salads. The salads are good. Uh-huh. It's not bad.
Right.
But I remember.
But you think it's just better than
Olive Garden when I was a kid was like the deal.
Yeah.
And like if we were like going to have a nice meal out, we would go to, there's like 6 of us, right? You go to Olive Garden or whatever. And when I go back now, I have to really adjust my expectations because it's not bad. It's just in my head, it is more than it actually is. Right. And maybe it never was that. It was just the place we didn't go as much. But yeah, Olive Garden is the one that I find will disappoint me.
I'll tell you what, the place where you get and I don't know, is it free breadsticks at Olive Garden or do you just get?
Yeah, they come
meal?
with the.
Okay,
I think they come with the
only
service.
thing that I know that hasn't taken a step back is Texas Roadhouse rolls.
Absolutely, yeah, they're incredible.
They have been cream of the crop for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
Which I could go for one of those.
Always. Now. I could always go for like an entire basket full of those rolls. And the butter. It's the butter as much as anything.
The honey cinnamon butter.
Oh my gosh. I would put that on anything.
Now, aside from that, so what you were alluding to was I officiated this weekend. So it was crazy. I did a lot of basketball games, a variety of different age groups. And one of the games, I did 2 games and then I broke it up on Saturday. So it was 2 games. I had like a 2.5 hour break because my fiance Ashley had a work event that she wanted me to go to, which was at that Wonder Bowl place in Blackstone.
Oh, yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Pretty cool. And then I went back and did 4 more. Well, the second game I did was Auburn and Crete.
Okay.
And this was high school level ball, varsity level ball. It was former state champs. Auburn, most recent state champion, and Crete is going to have a really good team. But Auburn, known to be really aggressive, strong defensively, works the ball well. Crete could put up or shut up, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of like that for them, and they were putting up in this game.
Yeah.
And it was very close, but it was kind of getting out of hand. And, I took some self-inventory after the game.
Yeah.
It wasn't my best reffing performance, and
Okay.
You could probably get it. Like, there was one time where I made a foul call, but may have mixed up the numbers.
Okay.
And I said the number. That kid apparently was in foul trouble.
Okay.
So I went to my other official, talked to him. I'm like, hey, did I miss the number? They're claiming it was on one number. I said I thought it was on this number. He said he didn't see it. So what do I have to do?
Yeah, you got to stick with your
I
call.
have to stick with my call because if I trust you and say it's on him, well, now the other team's going to be in my ear because they're going to think I did it because the other guy was
or
in foul
if they
trouble.
have a guy that's in foul trouble, they're going to expect you to change it for them too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I couldn't win in the situation. Yeah. And so it was one of Auburn's assistant. It wasn't Weeks going nuts in my ear. And I'm like, you're going to say it's a bad call, but I got to stick with my call.
Yeah.
Like,
if you don't have,
I don't have clear evidence to change.
If your other guy doesn't have it, then you have to stick with it.
And then, Crete so Auburn they were in the post was where it was getting really dirty. Like, some jabs here, some jabs there, but I was trying to let both play because both teams were doing it. But at the same time, the safety of the kids is the most important thing. Well, an elbow was thrown. I missed it. Okay. My other official missed it, but I stopped play for it. And, just kind of like let everybody take a breather.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't continue it. So I'm taking some stuff there. So it was just a lot going on in that game. Auburn ended up winning. Good team. They should have a good team again this year. Crete's going to be really good. But yeah, that's how it started. So I was driving to Wonder Bowl, and Ashley ended up calling me, and I was just in a different headspace thinking about the game.
Yeah.
He's like, I just got to get off the phone because you're not involved in this conversation. But all in all, I ended up doing 12 games. Well, technically I did 13 games. So I thought my day on Sunday started at noon.
Mm-hmm.
It started at 1.
Oh.
So I ended up doing a baker's dozen and getting only paid for 12.
Oh, that's not great.
No, but you know what? Do it for the kids, right? No big deal. Whatever. So yeah,
So what are the
I'm
coaches
really feeling it?
What are the coaches like in those summer league games? Because I coached in college summer league for several years, and I got to be honest, the idea of losing it on a ref in college summer league, I can't wrap my mind around that. Just the level of me caring.
What's on the line?
Yeah, which is nothing. Literally, we are only there
to get reps.
Try and get some reps in for the guys, try and get them to build a little chemistry, try and get the true freshmen to get a little experience at a higher level. Did I want to win? Sure, but I don't know. I can't picture myself going off on a ref. Well, unless someone on my team was getting like in danger or hurt or something like that by what was going on, which almost never happens.
Right.
I mean, things would have to get way out of control for that to happen. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around caring enough about the result of a summer league game to lose it on.
So majority of coaches are chill.
Yeah.
Majority of them are.
Because it's very low stakes.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But there are those that are, just they stand by their players and they do it very passionately.
I don't think that's a players thing. I think that's they can't turn it off. I think it's a them problem.
And it could be. It really could be. And I don't want to sit here and say like, hey, the way you coach is the wrong way, because in a lot of cases you tend to win because of the way you coach. But in summer league,
But if you're yelling at refs in summer leagues, you're doing it the wrong way. I'm just going to say it. I'm okay saying it. You don't have to. You're yelling at refs in summer leagues, reevaluate, my guy.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm feeling it in my calves today. I was walking in, and you guys could see me.
I thought you got in a car accident or something.
It looks like I'm walking on stilts.
You were struggling.
And I was reffing with the great David Horn, Omaha Central.
Oh, there we go.
We'll take a break.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back. Happy to be joined by Ravi Lula this week as DB tends to his football needs, not his playing football needs, his coaching.
Yeah.
So not for anybody to get confused out there, because DB can still pound.
I think he could still get it.
Pound the rock.
I think he could still get it. I'd like to see him suit up, maybe take a couple handoffs.
Did we ever tell you that at some point in time we're going to run the 40 against one another and see who has the fastest time?
Yeah, I think Damon's still going to win.
I'm overly confident that it's going to be me. I know that comes as a great shock to the population.
Can we get somebody to make like lines on this and we can play some bets?
Oh, no. Don't make me parlay it now. I know. I'll do a same game.
Are you going to parlay it with your 20-yard shuttle?
Yeah, exactly. Fastest off the block.
I want a vert. I want a broad jump. I want a 40.
Yeah, yikes.
And a 20-yard shuttle.
The way my calves feel right now, if we're doing anything other than running, I am screwed.
You're just going to cramp up and look like you got sniped.
Yeah. Hold the back leg. No, it's all that backpedaling. Nobody backpedals anymore.
So this is what I used to make my basketball players do. This is it makes your legs way stronger if you backpedal and run backwards and have that as part of your training, because nobody ever does that. So I used to have them do that. I'd have them do like cornerback backpedal drills to get them to like balance out their legs, and then I'd have them pull sleds like attached to their front, and then they walk backwards with them.
Smart.
And it helps prevent a ton of leg injuries. But yeah, normal people in like your normal day of life, myself included.
Yeah, you're not just
because I'm not doing it just for like.
Can you imagine going down the road, like you're driving down the road and you see somebody running backwards, like backpedaling on the sidewalk? First off, that's dangerous.
Right. Yeah.
Because you don't know where you're
going. You have to do it on like a treadmill.
Uh-huh.
Or I do have a sled at my house that sometimes I'll go forward and backwards and drag the sled a little bit.
So you could ref 31 games like the one kid I came
I
across
certainly
this
could
weekend.
not. I refed, I think, once in my life. I was doing when we were playing in college, we would host a fundraiser tournament for like the local churches or whatever, and it would help pay for like half our season or whatever. And all the basketball players had to ref those games. I was terrible. I made the right call most of the time, but it always took me a second. The brain to whistle time was way too long. I had a lag time there.
Yep.
And no matter if you get the call right or wrong,
people are mad.
If there is a lag time between what you see, what you think happened, and when you blow the whistle, people lose their minds because they assume it's hesitancy. And it's like, no, I just don't automatically blow whistles all the time. This is not part of my normal,
Yeah, and officiating's a lot. It's a lot of anticipation too.
Oh yeah.
Which is why officials get calls wrong.
Yeah, you see a miss
because you're anticipating the foul. You
kind of have to play the odds a little bit, right?
This guy doesn't stay vertical when he gets into the paint, so you're going to expect his arm to come down.
And that's why people are able to blow the whistle faster, is because they anticipate it happening and they don't have to think about it.
Right.
Whereas I was waiting to see it happen, and then I'd blow the whistle and people would lose their minds, and it was a whole thing. I did it one weekend, never again. I have no interest in reffing. It is the worst job. And you think
you take a lot of business when you do it.
I was going to say, you think that high school summer league coaches get in your ear. You should wait till you get like associate youth pastors in your ear. It is brutal.
God doesn't want you.
They won't swear at you, but they will yell at you like you have never been yelled at before.
Yeah, no, God wants you, Robbie, just so you know. At the end of the game.
It's brutal. And
Father Pat's foot was on the line.
And then they start dapping you up and stuff after. It's like, I don't want to talk to you right now. Get out of my face. So yeah, no reffing for me. I don't, not about that life.
Well, you could have learned that from watching Semi-Pro.
I know, right?
Roles were reversed, but
I didn't see Semi-Pro until after that incident. So now I know better. Now I know.
You said SMIC.
No more reffing for this guy. Not worth it. The $25 a game is not going to cut it for me.
No. It's good money, though.
No, it is, especially if you're racking up the, it's not bad at all. But
it's good exercise. It's good money. I love doing it for the kids, because really there is a shortage in officials.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
You could always
and I
more.
appreciate good officials because there's not that many of them.
But I just like doing it so the kids can play.
Yeah.
Not to say that, hey, if I didn't ref, God forbid, or, there would be no games.
Summer league would cease to exist if Andrew didn't ref.
Right. No. So it's just because I was so blessed to be able to play the game for as long as I did. So I want to make sure that others get to do the same.
No, I get it. And
I think that's where you had mentioned this in the first segment, that coaches need to take some self-inventory sometimes of, hey, like, if I want to keep coaching, if I want to keep these kids playing, sometimes you have to take it a little bit easy. Know the moment.
Yeah.
Take it a little bit easier on the summer versus in season.
Also, you have to understand a lot of those guys, at least in my experience, a lot of the refs that were doing our summer league would end up reffing our real games. Not all of them. Some of them were volunteers, or not volunteers, but some of them were part-time guys or just whoever. Mm-hmm. But there were a decent amount of our actual refs would ref during the summer too. And so you know how easy it is to build good relationships with those refs when you have nothing on the line? It's just a total wasted opportunity to build good rapport with a ref if you're in their ear chirping in a stupid summer league game. Like, what are we doing? To me, it's not even to be nice to the ref. It's totally self-serving, but also they are human beings still. I think people forget that, but it's totally self-serving. Just do what's good for you. What's good for you is to be nice to the ref until you have to be mean to him. Because then they listen to you. If you're not complaining about every single call, they will listen to the calls that you complain about. They just tune it out otherwise. If you're yelling at them the whole time, turn it off. We're not listening to that guy anymore. Unless you tell him something horrible and then he's all of a sudden listening again.
Is Summer League, would that be like practice?
No.
It's like a glorified scrimmage.
Yeah, it is. It's still competitive. There's still stuff on the line because you still play in tournaments.
And I only asked that because I was just wondering if it was practice for the ref too.
It is for some of them.
Yeah, well, it's definitely
especially the younger guys.
Yeah, because I don't ref on the regular.
Right.
Like I used to ref in Missouri. Like I would ref, church league games. Yeah. I even did a few high school games. But beside that, when I moved here, it's this job. It's Hurrdat Sports. Yeah. And then I'll pick up a few games if I want to.
Absolutely.
So, getting back into the swing of things, I watched a couple of videos on new rules just to make sure I knew what I was doing if it was presented to me.
Yeah.
I watched intentional fouls over again, technical fouls. Yeah. Those are things you don't call
all the time.
Like travels happen a lot, right? Out of bounds, you blow your whistle a lot. A foul on the arm happens a lot, but intentional fouls, you're like, okay, did they loosen up anything? Right. Did they get harder on anything?
Well, and you have to remember, what's the high school rule versus the college rule versus the pro rule? You just have to make sure the distinctions.
There's the flop rule now in college.
Yeah.
And so, I look at that and I'm like, well, I believe it was some coach or a parent was telling me in Colorado they do that, or Kansas
in high school?
Do that in high school. Yeah. The flop rule. And so I'm like, well, do they do that here? Because I don't know. They don't.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But it was
it's
something
stuff you have to check on.
Right,
yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Just to double check on. So just an overall a good weekend. My body's like I said, still recovering. I probably have to go home and ice after the show.
Yeah, you might need an ice bath.
Dude, it's the back of the calves. I just don't want to get up. It doesn't hurt right now, but when I stand,
as soon as you start walking,
oh gosh,
you might need to if you end up going golfing today, you probably better drive that bad boy.
I'm definitely in a cart and I'm going right up to my ball. I'm not searching for the ball. If it's in play, I'm playing it. If not, I'm dropping.
I don't care what it says about the cart path. We are driving to the ball.
Let's give you an update on who we will be talking to on today's show. Sam McKewon, sports editor at the Omaha World-Herald. He comes up at 8 o'clock. Then at 8:45, Brady Oltmans. That is Sam, but not Brady. This is Brady now. Brady Oltmans, Nebraska football and recruiting for Hail Varsity. And then we close the show talking Michigan football with Anthony Broome. It's a part of our schedule breakdown. So we started with the first 4 games of the season last week. We went into detail about La Tech, NIU. I'm going backwards here. Colorado and Minnesota. There you go. Minnesota, of course, week 1, August 31st, I believe, is that Thursday. Sometimes I get that mixed up with the 28th, and I don't know why. I'm pretty sure it's the 31st.
I think you're right. I think it's the 31st. That sounds right.
All I know is it's on Thursday, and it's the last Thursday in August.
Yeah, we'll figure it out when we get there. We don't need to know what day it is.
We'll give our own thoughts on Michigan later on in the show as well, probably about 9 o'clock. We'll do the sports cleanup at 9:30, but also something fun today. So as Ravi found out last week, I've never seen The Last Dance, which is
horrible blind spot for you.
Yeah, definitely. What's the documentary you've never seen out there? Hopefully it's The Last Dance too, and you can watch it with me.
That's true.
But Ravi's being nice.
I'm trying to.
For the 4th time, he is now watching The Last Dance, and we are going to get into that a little bit throughout the show. My reactions, his reactions 4 times into it. We'll start with that next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute.
I think the word legend is thrown around too much in sports. Almost every glowing adjective applies to Michael Jordan. But you know who's legendary? Satchel Paige is legendary. Babe Ruth is legendary. Because so many of the stories are apocryphal. We don't have documentation. Virtually everything
Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds.
It's replayed many times over. Now we're seeing it again. The stuff shows up on YouTube.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
You know, I think the word legend is thrown around too much in sports. Almost every glowing adjective applies to Michael Jordan. But you know who's legendary? Satchel Paige is legendary. Sure. Babe Ruth is legendary because so many of the stories are apocryphal. We don't have documentation. Virtually everything that Michael Jordan did, we saw it in real time. It's replayed many times over. Now we're seeing it again.
Welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Ravi Lula, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club, live on 590 ESPN Radio here in town, live on Twitter, live on YouTube, the Hurrdat Sports and Hail Varsity Radio YouTube pages. You can catch us on the podcast. If you miss anything on the show, that's Apple, that's Spotify, that's Google, that's Amazon. And you can also get involved by calling 888-638-4876, the phone line, or online on YouTube by posting a comment, and we will see it there. Ravi?
Yes.
A big moment for me last night.
You started The Last Dance.
I started The Last Dance.
It's about time.
And you know what?
I took notes.
What was I doing?
I don't know, man.
I took notes too, because I'm like, I have to make sure I'm following along properly, because something you asked me last night, you said, I'm really interested in what you already knew versus what you didn't know.
Yeah.
And I just got to tell you,
so we just did the first 2 episodes.
Right, first 2 episodes. And we'll do 2 episodes every day this week.
Yep.
So I'm going to finish the season with
this
Ravi.
week. Yep.
And so
I had to take notes because I'd seen it all already, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't jumping ahead on you.
And that's smart.
Yes.
Because you could have been talking about episode 4.
Yep.
Just and the way The Last Dance worked was weird, because the way the timeline went, it was like they jumped from 97 back to 1985, and then they'd go up to 80, or it was 84 when Michael was drafted. Then they'd go up to 85, then back to 19 whatever when Michael was born. And when he was,
so there's basically
up,
2 timelines that are going on at the same time. It's the course of the 97-98 season is the main timeline, and then as they get to storylines within that timeline, they jump back to either the start of Jordan's career, or they go back and look at, like in episode 2 was the Scottie Pippen episode, where they look back at Scottie Pippen's life and his career. And so you're kind of working at 2 simultaneous timelines during the documentary, which I kind of enjoy.
You know, it was hard to follow along at first,
but once you kind of understand what they're doing,
it's
a pretty interesting way to tell the story.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I sat down and I texted Ravi at, it was probably 10:30 when I finished episode 2. And I said, what was I doing?
I don't know, man. Huge blind spot for you.
As a Bulls fan.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the thing for me was, gosh, people were raving about it. It was The Last Dance this, Last Dance that. When it was live on TV, it was during COVID, I think. And so everybody was just on it.
Yeah, they were starving for something sports related to watch.
I was still working during COVID.
Yeah.
So I had, and you know, Iowa didn't shut down for sports. So I still had things to cover. But I should have taken time already to watch it. But I don't know. Maybe because so many people were talking about it, I wanted to be the one that rebelled. I don't know. It was dumb. It was poor decision making.
It's so good.
But anyway, I'm here. I'm on the train.
All right. So I've got questions.
And let's hear them.
So number 1, how much of because the first episode kind of sets up with the reason it's The Last Dance. Everybody kind of knew going into the season that this is it.
It was.
How much of that were you aware of with the front office kind of machinations and Jerry Krause wanting to tear the thing down? Like, how much of that were you aware of before starting to watch?
I was unaware of that completely.
Okay, because that's a big deal.
That was a huge deal.
That is the whole underpinning of the entire season.
Right. Now, for everyone out there, I was born that year.
Yeah.
I was born in 1997. Yes. So there's a reason why I was pretty unaware of those moments and those things. Now, what I wasn't unaware of was Michael's story. So I knew that pretty well. And I got a refresher on that when the movie Air came out this year.
Yeah,
and I
great
watched
movie.
it.
Love that movie.
Really good movie. Yes. Thought it was well put together. I thought the storyline really did fit what happened.
Yes.
But I also think they got really into Michael's college career, which I was impressed with.
Yes.
That part I didn't know a lot of those things. Like, you know, when Michael was a freshman at UNC, I knew he hit the big shot, like those things. But I didn't realize how people really thought about him early on in his career. I knew he was cut from his high school basketball team, things like that. But his work ethic, you know, you can appreciate it when you see it, but I always thought he was just great. I never thought he got great.
Oh, no, he was a maniac.
And so that's why when I was watching this, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Because when you talk about the greatest players in the world, sometimes you just think that they're that.
Yeah.
Right? LeBron was just that. Right? But he worked to get that.
Yeah, I'm sure
you just forget about
crazy
that.
hard, right?
But Michael was, I think, even more different than LeBron in this sense. Because LeBron was so highly touted coming out of high school where Michael had to go to college, right? To make a name for himself.
Right. Well,
and then getting to the NBA.
And it's kind of the way, now it's, especially since his passing, you hear about all the Kobe stories about how maniacal of a worker he was, right? The reason he's like that is because of Jordan. Like everything he modeled his game after, including the borderline psychotic work ethic, is from Jordan. So everything that we think about Kobe now, where you've got all the videos and stuff of other players talking about it, and with, there's the famous video, I think it's from the Redeem Team documentary, where like Carmelo and LeBron and Dwayne Wade are all talking about how Kobe would come to breakfast just drenched already because he'd already been working out for 2-3 hours. And all of those
Is that the USA one?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the 2008 USA documentary.
I still need to watch that.
Also very good. Finish Last Dance first. But
yeah, let's not skip ahead.
Yeah. But all those things that people talk about with Kobe that you see, like the videos on social media and stuff, all of that and more was true about Jordan. And that's the thing that is easy to overlook because he was so gifted naturally, to remember, the reason he was the best was because he was that gifted naturally and he worked harder than everyone else. It was that perfect mix that sometimes you see guys, you're like, hey man, we love his ceiling, but you don't know if he's ever going to get there. Jordan was the guy that you knew, I'm getting everything this guy could possibly offer.
Right. Now, what I also didn't know was the Phil Jackson story before the season.
Okay.
Like
how he came back for the last season.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I didn't know that Krause had a meeting with him before the season saying, no matter what, you win a championship, you go undefeated, you're still gone. That to me was
wild.
Yeah.
The Krause thing is so much weirder than anyone can possibly imagine.
I can't get behind firing a successful head coach.
No, especially when the core of the team is still intact. It's not like they had
a huge.
It's not like they had. Piece. It's not like Jordan retired and they're like, "Hey, let's start anew."
It's not that Pippen was gone and not that Rodman was gone.
Everybody was still under contract. Everybody was still willing to come back if they weren't under contract. It was just Krause's ego. He was saying, I want to do it on my own. And the funny thing is, he probably wasn't that bad of a guy, but there's this, I've mentioned
poor decision making.
Well, I've mentioned it with Golden State, right? The front office has this desire to kind of prove how good they are at their job. And I don't think it's super uncommon, but you see it with Jerry Krause, right? Because he found Scottie Pippen. That's great. Incredible, right? He pulled off the trade to get him and to move up in the draft to get him from Seattle.
He deserves a lot of credit for building the dynasty.
He's very good at his job, right? None of it matters without Michael Jordan, and he didn't draft Michael Jordan.
Correct.
Right? So there's a part of him that wants to prove, hey, I can win a championship building my team my way. That's why
around Michael.
And you're going to get not even that. I think post Michael is what he wanted to do. I think he wanted to win a title without Michael.
Saying. Right.
Yes.
I know what you're saying.
Same thing has kind of happened with Golden State. The previous regime drafted Steph, right? Then Bob Myers comes in, does a great job. Incredible job putting guys around into the dynasty, getting Kevin Durant to come in.
Now you want to be the focal point.
But now he wants to prove he can do it. That's why the Kuminga, Wiseman, Moody, Poole thing happened, is because he wanted to build his own core. He wanted to build a championship contender that outlasted Steph, so it could seem like an organizational thing or a Bob Myers thing. It's this. I think it's Isaiah Thomas talks about. It's either Isaiah Thomas or Pat Riley, and I know those are two totally different people, but I get them confused in my head. They talk about when teams win championship, it's this disease of more. Role players want more. They want more shots. They want more money. They want more attention. Superstars want more. They want more endorsements. They want more money. They want right. Everybody wants more. The thing that people don't talk about is the front office wants more too, and not just more rings and more fame and whatever. They want more in the sense of proving they can do it without their guy. And it usually happens when somebody else drafted the guy that's bringing them titles.
You know what the most amazing thing about this documentary is?
What's that?
Is that they had this thing, they videotaped it, they put it all together, they did all this in 1997.
Yeah.
They were going to release it, and then somebody got the bright idea to shelf it because they didn't think there either wasn't a means to get it out there, or they didn't think anybody would partake in this or like it.
You know, I thought about
22
that a little bit
years
too,
later, I mean,
I thought about that because I'm like, how do you have this video? How do you have all this footage?
They got
because
granted
the
access.
idea was something that was shot back in 97 and they held on to it.
Well,
and sometimes holding on to an idea like that can be the best thing for you.
And in the streaming era, documentaries have this whole other life that they never had before.
Mm-hmm. When did 30 for 30s get started?
2010s.
Yeah.
That's kind of when the sports documentary was reborn, was the 30 for 30s.
Yeah. Well, there's another piece of this I want to get into.
We got to get into Scottie Pippen.
We'll do it at 8:30, and that's Scottie Pippen, because how undervalued he was, I didn't know.
I have some thoughts.
And
here.
I have one thing that I say a lot that I want to add to this piece.
Okay.
So we'll do that after we talk to Sam McKewon.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. That kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Robbie Lula, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Happy to have you with us and happy to be joined by Sam McKewon as he normally shoots with us at the 8 o'clock segment of the Monday morning show at SW McKewon, OWH, the sports editor at the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Hey, good, man. Good. Big Chicago guy. I know you're a big Bears fan. Are you a Bulls fan?
I'm not.
Okay.
But I follow. I follow the Bulls. No, my NBA teams, and this is 35 years now. Well, longer than that actually. Are Golden State and Portland. Those are the two teams that I've followed since I was a kid.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because I just started watching The Last Dance for the first time, if you can believe it, and I didn't know if you were a big Last Dance fan.
Yes, I'm a big fan of that. So yeah, that's a terrific documentary. It's right up there with the best work that ESPN's ever done. So that and the OJ doc are probably the two best ESPN docs they've ever done. And yeah, I mean, Michael Jordan was loomed very large in all of our childhood. And those teams too. I mean, I could tell you everybody on those teams because everybody watched the NBA back then.
Mm-hmm.
We don't now, but everybody did. It's true. I mean, I couldn't. It's much harder to tell you. You wouldn't find necessarily a ton of kids today who could tell you every player on the Denver team that just won the NBA title. And you used to be able to do that with the Bulls. I mean, you knew it was Jordan and Rodman and Pippen, and the Rodman came later. But Bill Cartwright and Harvey Grant and Horace Grant. Sorry. All those guys. And so I read the Jordan rules when I was in, I think college. And then, so The Last Dance is terrific. I think I went through it about 1.5 times. I don't know if I'll ever finish it a second time.
Well, Sam, I'm on time 4 because I'm rewatching it with Andrew here. I'm curious, as somebody who grew up through the Jordan era and that Bulls era, I'm curious how you digested The Last Dance in terms of how much of it were you aware of, how much of it was kind of a reminder, and how much of it was, this is totally new information to me. That's really interesting.
There was new information because I think, it's predicated in part on the back end of his career.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 98 season.
Mm-hmm.
And by then I was in college and probably not paying quite as close attention. There's kind of a sweet spot in your youth where you're paying a lot of attention around 10 years old, all the way up until maybe you're out of high school. And then you lose a little touch there in college, and then maybe you come back to it as an adult. So there was some new information because a lot of it was built on that final championship season. But I mean, a lot of it I knew. If you read the Jordan rules, a good chunk of it already. And of course, everybody had followed Michael Jordan's career. I think there's obviously reflections within the documentary that are specific to his recollections when he gave the interviews. And so I think, there's a certain power to that. He certainly represents an era that we no longer exist in for an athlete. There's just no question that, and there's things that are really appealing about Jordan's worldview, and then there's things that are just an anachronism to today. So it's interesting that way. That's just the best way to put it. There's such a gap between who Michael Jordan is and who, say, Steph Curry is. And I've watched thousands of Steph Curry games at this point. Probably not thousands, but hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah.
And, just who he is and who Jordan is. And there's similarities to the two of them. They both like golf, those things like that. But there's also huge, huge differences. And if you're going to ask me, well, who is the personality shaping person of the basketball today and in the future, I would not say it's LeBron. I would say it's Steph.
Mm-hmm.
Kobe in the first part of LeBron's era, and then Steph in this part of the era. LeBron is somehow going to, I think, remain sort of beyond in some ways. So everybody will acknowledge that he was the best player of all time without necessarily desiring to emulate him or desiring to, put him in that, and there's a lot of similarities between Kobe and Jordan, but very, very few between Kobe and Steph. So I think the nature of the sport has changed, and I'm not sure where it's going to go from here. If they don't find somebody else to build the sport around, it could be in a little bit of trouble, because you certainly don't want, I know we've gone off on a tangent here, you as good of a player as some of the guys are today, you don't necessarily want to build it around some of the guys that are playing today. Like Steph Curry he's still the guy, and as long as he's in the league, he's going to be the biggest star. He and LeBron.
Sam, let's change gears now and talk football, because there was some recruiting news yesterday that we'll get into, but I want to start with this kind of just more of a general question here. With the way Nebraska has recruited this summer, it seems like they're ahead of the curve when looking ahead toward the future. Do you think it will still take the Matt Rule 3 years to see dividends with this team?
Yes, I do. I don't think if you're recruiting a bunch of 5 stars, maybe you could jumpstart that a little bit, but a lot of the guys that are recruiting are probably not going to play in 2024. So, I think it's going to be a developmental program. Here's the thing. I think there's a feeling within it that, you're going to have an experienced offensive line here in 2023. You hope that's also true in 2024. There's other things that you need to build up. I think they know that. They've got to build a wide receiver core that has genuine chemistry and also is sort of a grassroots, and not just a guy that you're bringing in from some other school, but somebody who's lived in your playbook for 2 to 3 years and really knows it and really knows how to play the game, and knows how to play the game under the tutelage of the coaches that they have. I think that's also true at the running back position. They just haven't been elite there. Minnesota's been elite there. I think Wisconsin's been really, really good there. Nebraska's not. Illinois had a really good one last year, Chase Brown. They just haven't been good enough at that position. I think they've been very good at tight end, but obviously they're starting over there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you've got to find a way to build that front seven. So I think the sense is, hey, let's get all these young guys in here now. Let's begin that process this year. I think they can still win 5 or 6 this year. But next year, maybe you can win 6 or 7. I don't know. But you're starting to bring around some of those young players. And I think in 2025 and 2026 is when, you begin to have the kind of roster where everybody kind of looks around and says, yeah, maybe there's a shot here. The schedule this year isn't tough, super tough. So maybe they can get over the top and get the 6 or 7 wins. I don't know that the roster's there, but there may be enough close games where the coaching kicks in and they're able to pull off something nice.
Sam, I'm curious how much you think the lack of running back success at Nebraska, how much is that to do with the guys that they actually have in the room, and how much of it do you think has to do with the fact that the offensive line has been kind of lackluster in recent years? I mean, those two things obviously work pretty hand in hand, but do you assign some of that blame to the line and not to the actual running back room?
Oh, some. Not like Nebraska was running for 100 yards per game before last year. Mm-hmm. They were still running the ball for pretty good chunky yards. I would say that the running backs themselves obviously bear some of the responsibility of that. Anthony Grant was good at times last year. I think toward the end of the year he got a little. He could have had 1,000 yards if he had kept going, and he had an outside chance at that going into the final game. But at the end of the day, didn't get a ton of blocking. And And the other thing is Anthony Grant just didn't, he didn't consistently gain yards at the line of scrimmage. If he could get to the second level, he was dangerous, but too often it took him too long to get there. So, I think there's something to be said for the quality of the player, and I think they haven't had. You can go back and watch some of the runs that Amir Abdullah had in 2014, and it weren't because of the offensive line. Amir just made plays, and I think that they haven't had a good running back since then. Carroll Newby was decent. Divino Zigbo was pretty good that one year, and I just think it's been a little downhill since then. I don't think they've found the guy, so to speak, and I don't know if the guy's on the team right now. I think they're still looking. Quentin Ives may be that guy, but I'd be surprised if Quentin Ives was playing this year. I think he'll probably redshirt.
We're talking to Sam McKewon, sports editor at the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, you considered the commitment of Preston Taumua the biggest recruiting win for the Huskers in the 24 cycle. Is it because it's reopening the Hawaiian pipeline? Is it because of his other offers on the West Coast? Why do you consider this the biggest recruiting win?
Well, by saying that, I'm not saying he's the highest rated player in the class. That's Carter Nelson. I'm not saying that he has the highest ceiling of anybody in the class. That's Danny Kaling. But I'm saying that, this is the commit that you would have, along with Ja'Cory Barney, that you would have said was the least likely. And so, in that way, it's a surprising and impressive win. Now, a lot of the guys that Nebraska has received commits from, Nebraska was either clearly their best offer, or Nebraska was in a small group of teams and just happened to win. Gibson Pyle would be an example there. But Callan Barta and Rex Guthrie, Nebraska was clearly their best offer. They weren't going somewhere else because Nebraska was their best offer by a long shot. Donovan Jones fits into that category. Now, if they're able to get Grant Bricks, then I think it goes even up another notch, because I think Grant Bricks could have gone to a lot of schools, including Oklahoma. And so, we'll see. Nebraska doesn't usually beat Oklahoma in recruiting. If we're going to be really honest, they just they don't pull it off. It doesn't happen very much. I remember they went through a huge recruiting battle for Jalen Redmond back in the day, and they didn't win that one. Oklahoma won that battle. There's been kids in Wichita that Nebraska went after, and they didn't win it. There's been kids in St. Louis, and it was Nebraska and Oklahoma, and they didn't win it. A couple of kids that Nebraska got from the state of Oklahoma didn't offer. So, they've had a hard time beating that team. Now, in the case of Taumua, they beat Oregon, and they legitimately beat Oregon. That was, and Oregon is a recruiting juggernaut. So, beat Oregon, which offers a lot of NIL money. Be able to do that, pretty impressive. And they did it. And so I think you got to win some of those. Even if the kid doesn't pan out, you've got to be able to go toe-to-toe with the teams that are peddling a lot of money. That's the wrong word, but offering a lot of money and are really strong in recruiting. You got to go beat those teams sometimes. You got to have some of the other guys too. You got to have the Callan Bart and the Rex Guthrie and Braylon Prude. You got to have those guys too. You got to go and win some. You got to go win. You got to go win a recruiting battle where the kid is wanted by 10 teams, and they're all really good. And they've done that twice here in the last 10 days with Ja'Cory Barney and then the offensive lineman from Hawaii.
Sam, you said something that caught my attention there about Daniel Kaelin. You think he's the guy that has the highest ceiling in the class. What leads you to make a statement like that? And I guess if you're comfortable, what do you think that ceiling is?
Well, he's a quarterback, and so anytime you have an opportunity to get a quarterback and then that player maximizes their potential, they have a chance to affect your team in a greater way than almost anybody on the field.
Sure.
And I understand that they have to have offensive linemen that block for him, but yeah, his ceiling is really high. I think that the question mark about Danny really had nothing to do with his ability to play the position, but maybe arm strength and had he done it and things like that. I don't think Danny Kaelin has the strongest arm in the world, but I think it's more than adequate for what I think it's Kenny Pickett strong. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think Danny can be an NFL quarterback, and I think he can be, I don't know if a first round pick, but I think he can be a day 2 We're a high day 3 pick. And to be clear, Nebraska's really never had that since Vince Ferragamo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the last time. Turner Gill was taken. Keith McCant was taken. Eric Crouch was taken, but he was taken as a wing back or whatever they were trying to recruit, sign him as with the Rams. I think Kalen can be a legit, NFL quarterback. So that's a high ceiling. There aren't a lot of those. I think he has that ability. There's things he does now that a lot of other kids don't do when you watch his film. Little things about how he climbs the pocket, manipulates it, that I think will translate well to this level. And then it just becomes, if he's able to physically mature, building an offense that takes advantage of his skill set. And the trick with that is that, there's a lot of coaches, and I'm not saying that Matt Rule is in this group, who are just in love with arm strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when they build an offense, Let's build an offense around needing a quarterback who throws the ball as far as Josh Allen. And that's really not what you need. It helps, sure. But what you need is an offense that depends on rhythm and timing and moving the chains and getting deeper and deeper into a defensive pitch count, so to speak. And I think if you want to build an offense like that around Kalen, I think you're gonna like what you see. But we'll just have to see over time what Nebraska intends to do offensively and where it goes.
Sam, overreaction or nugget of truth? Because I've been following along with Nebraska's top 10% list that they keep putting out on their pages the last 6 or so. It surprises you Quinton Newsome hasn't been featured on one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Overreaction or nugget of truth?
I mean,
because I don't know if we just follow along with those lists because they're out there, if that's actually what's taking place behind closed doors.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a nugget of truth to it. But I can't speak to it. I think that's,
But does it surprise you that you haven't seen his name pop up? Because we've been talking about him being, maybe the biggest impact player on that defense over the last month.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what, maybe what his off-season protocol is versus what some of the other guys are doing. I'm not, again, I'm not entirely sure what track he's on versus what track they're on. It could be some small detail that keeps him off of that is not terribly impactful to his play on the field. There may be something that he's working through as a player, working through an injury or working through, some shift in his technique, any number of things that could come up. I think that it's an interesting, I'm sure Matt Rule has thought about, because he thinks about these things. I'm sure he's thought about what it looks like to a fan base to put that thing out there all the time and not see one of your best players on it. And so that'll have to be a question that he's able to address and answer. I don't know that they publish this information at Temple or Baylor. I don't know I don't think they did. They may find that after a summer of doing that, that they don't want to do that again. I know that Scott Frost got into, let's publish all the testing results. And I'm just telling you that we're in the social media thing, we're just in a different world now. And so, I don't know if that's going to be something that they want to do, all the time going forward. Publishing the 10%. Initially, when they put it out, they just put the 10, and nobody knew what it meant. I knew what it meant because I've been, and we're working on stories that will later bear itself out. I've been working on a bunch of rural culture stories, so I knew what it meant, and I kind of explained what it was. But it's a thing that they like to do. They got a lot of these. they got a lot of little competitions, and you remember in the spring they did those posting where they were and all that
right
on Twitter.
Right.
They got a lot of little competitions like that. I don't know if they'll last through 3 years of the program or not. It's once I think you establish the culture to some degree, I don't know that you need to do all that, but I think they feel like they wanted to post it on social media so that the players got an understanding, maybe a little serotonin bump of how they were doing. So it's interesting to me. The fact that you asked that question reinforces to me that it's a topic. To be clear, there's about 4% of the universe on Twitter. So most fans don't know, and they don't care. It's just not something that's necessarily going to be front of mind for most people who aren't on Twitter, because I don't think maybe they're posting it to Instagram. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I think it's more of a message to the players than the fan base at large, and maybe that's a message that they feel like Newsom needs to receive.
That's an interesting point there, Sam. As you're working on stuff as the season approaches, as you're kind of doing your, I'm sure it's not last preparations quite yet, but as you're kind of getting into the swing of football prep, and as we're 5.5 weeks away from the first game, has there been anything that jumps out to you that you're thinking about, that you're, a player, a concept, a culture thing, like these 10% lists? Is there something that's been on your mind as you're starting to get a little bit deeper into the Nebraska football preparation for the fall?
Yeah, I think one of certainly the two things that kind of jump out to me, the culture thing is ongoing, and so it informs success. But the closer you get to the season, I think you start to have more specific questions. So a question that I always go into any given season with is, can the offense, any offense, this offense, turn around, hand the ball to the running back, and have a successful running game without having to run the quarterback? And if not, how often do they need to run the quarterback? Because there's a threshold. You get up around 10, 11 carries a game, and you might as well just expect about 12 fumbles a year. 12 possessions that are basically like a jump ball in the air, right? Only a super important jump ball, because possessions in football are way more important than possessions in basketball. So, you're going to have 12 possessions a year that you might lose or gain. You never know, by running your quarterback 10 or 11 times. So there's that. Can they run the ball without having to do that? And if so, it kind of sets up some other things for you. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I'm just interested to see how it's going to look. How does that defense fare when a team comes out and says, okay, we see that you're running this defense and it's smaller and faster and quicker. We're just going to put 2 tight ends on the field. We're going to line up and we're just going to run it all night. And we're going to find out, and you're going to do your little twists and your stunts and your blitzes, and we're gonna watch those, and we're gonna adjust to those. And as the game goes on, we're gonna seal off your edges, and we're just gonna run the football at you, and we're gonna see if you can stop it with your 3-3-5. That's the other thing. Can Nebraska stop teams with that defense in the Big Ten? When Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, when they all hammer it at you, can you slow it down? That'll be the question. That'll be the other question that I'm thinking about.
Sam, always great stuff. We appreciate your time, as always, on Monday, and have a great day. That's Sam McKewon, sports editor at the Omaha World-Herald, at SW McKewon, OWH on Twitter. When we come back, we'll revisit conversations that we left off with to close out the 7 o'clock hour. Talks about Scottie Pippen. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
Oltmans got it as he rolls over the goal line. Takes the snap rather. He's going to fire towards the end zone. Up and Oltmans got it as he rolls over the goal line.
Radio.
Takes the snap rather. He's going to fire towards the end zone. Touchdown. And we'll hand it off to Donovan Edwards. Makes a good cut in the backfield. Now back towards the middle of the field. Inside the 10. Runs through a tackler to the goal line. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment and tell you about the official coffee of Coffee and Cream, the Beanery, which has been a hot spot for the other person under my roof, as she likes to find her way over to the Beanery at least twice a week.
Okay.
And sure enough, the statement reflects that. So she loves it. I love it too. And we drink the Beanery here every single day on Coffee and Cream. Usually what I like to do too, Ravi, is I get my cup and then I bring my Tervis, which DV makes fun of me for saying Tervis, and I pour the coffee into the Tervis and it stays warm throughout the whole show. And it's some of the best coffee you can get, some of the best people you'll interact with. When
what do you pour it into?
Don't talk to me, Shane.
It's a Tervis.
It's a Tervis.
Tervis.
Never heard of it.
It's like never heard of her?
Never heard of her.
It's like one of those Yetis, Shane, but it starts with a T and ends in Irvis.
Does it come with guava?
No, but Zipline does. The can opener tropical ale over at Zipline. Good segue there, Shane. If you aren't drinking coffee this early, maybe you're drinking an ice cold Zipline beer. Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. I'm for it. I'm for you. I'm for you to enjoy the new summer crusher brewed with guava and lemon. It's perfect for a hot summer day, which isn't today. It's a little rainy, but that's not to say you can't have a zip line today either. It's refreshing. It's slightly tart. You can find it at your favorite beer store, and it's now available at all Zipline locations. Now, I don't know if you can get them at the Storm Chaser game. I really need to text Marty and find that out.
Which ones?
Zip lines. Can you get Zipline beer at an Omaha Storm Chasers game?
I'm not sure.
I know they carry a variety of beer products, which I won't say.
And some local ones, yeah.
And so I'm going to ask.
I don't know if that's an exclusive deal, though. I'm not sure.
I'm not too sure either, which is cool, though. I mean, if you are at the Storm Chasers game this week, they play St. Paul, which will be a great series. They have the day off today. They'll start tomorrow, and then it's a 6-game homestand against the Saints. And lots of fun activities for you and the family. Hopefully you can avoid the rain like we are getting right now, which I'm sure you can. You can find one day this week. That'll be pretty nice. I mean, just looking at the weather app, Wednesday through Friday seems sunny skies, 82, 83, high of 87 on Wednesday. You can find some good time to find your way to the Omaha Storm Chasers game. Give them a shout. They're playing St. Paul. Watch a Storm Chasers victory. And enjoy the time with the family over at Werner Park. Okay, let's get back into conversations about The Last Dance, because there's something I want to stick with here, and it's something that can be applied everywhere. And it's not just with basketball. It's not just this documentary. I mean, apply it to Husker football even. The whole Scottie Pippen thing is crazy to me and how undervalued he was. Now, I know he made the decision to take the 7-year deal at $18 million.
So when you say undervalued, you're talking about paycheck.
When it came paycheck-wise in 97, and they're still not going to rework it because he is the second best player in the NBA at this time. I mean, you look at all stats, all categories. You pair him with Michael Jordan, they're the best duo in basketball, right? So it's kind of like the Jerry squared here, right?
Reinsdorf and Krause.
Yep. So you're talking ownership here. From the top down, this is how it always should work. And I know companies have their best, like they look out for the company over anything else, right? The people at the top look out for what's best for them versus what's best for the people below them. And I think there's a flaw in that system because sometimes you have to forego what's right for you and just do what's right. And I know you want to stick to your guns and say, hey, you signed this deal, you can't get restructured. Like, no, that's not how we do things here. Like, no, we're not doing that. But in some cases, you have to be willing to toss up your white surrender flag and say, okay, things need to change in order to get the chemistry to stick the way that it's been going, the way it's been flowing. Like businessmen sometimes just don't get that. To have long-term relationships, you have to be willing to change sometimes. You have to be willing to adjust on the fly. Now, in the same light, Scottie Pippen is responsible for what signing the deal. And he also didn't do the right thing by abandoning his boys in a time of what I would call great need.
Yeah.
Like this is, the stakes, what everything is at stake here, right? So it's their last dance. It's kind of that situation of don't let the do what's right door hit you on the way out here. Too.
Yes.
But I would put more blame on management for not adjusting because that's your job. Your job is to oversee the program, the whole thing. The franchise, the players, the system, everything. You make sure that things are right from within. And if you don't have that, there will be issues and you wouldn't have situations that play out. What I think, because I haven't seen the last 8 episodes yet, how they will play out, in my mind right now, problems on management.
So it's hard not to point at management in this situation because of what we know about Jerry Krause. And as you'll find out even more about Jerry Krause, which I don't think will make you any more likely to be sympathetic for the management situation. But let me play the other side of the coin here. So in the documentary, Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, says a couple of things that I think inform how I feel about the Scottie Pippen contract. Okay. Number one, he says, I don't know if it's true or not. He says he told him he didn't think it was a good deal for him. that he thought it was too long
to a lot of
to him and Michael. I think he said at both times that he thought it was too long and that he was limiting his earning potential. So if that's true, first of all, good on Jerry Reinsdorf for being honest,
for being open.
It's better for him to lock up Scottie Pippen long term.
Right.
If he actually had that conversation with him, then I think that changes how you have to feel a little bit about the conversation. And the other thing that does is, for me, Jerry Reinsdorf made it very clear that everybody knew that Jerry Krause was not going to renegotiate your contract. He says that in the documentary. Now, again, if that's true or not, we don't know.
Which I think is the problem.
What we have to, I think we have to take it on face value in terms of what he's saying there. So if he told Scottie, hey, I don't think you should sign a deal that long, and Scottie knew, because everybody apparently knew, that Jerry Krause wasn't going to renegotiate a deal, I have a really hard time feeling sympathetic for Scottie Pippen in that situation. You don't have to feel
sorry for him.
And the other part is, I think he knew what he was doing because they get into his family situation in the documentary. To lock up
his family and make sure that even if he got hurt,
to lock up long-term money because his dad is paralyzed. He has a little brother who's paralyzed also. He was taking care of a lot of people. He wanted long-term money. So he sacrificed possibly bigger money. And here's the other thing on Scottie Pippen. He was underpaid for most of that time period. Probably at least the last half of that deal, he was pretty severely underpaid. Go look at his contracts the last 3 or 4 years of his career. He was dramatically overpaid for his production.
And you know what?
The last 3 or 4 years, it probably ends up even. Like, let's be honest here.
And it's cool to end up even, but in the moment.
It's horrifying, right? If you're Scottie Pippen, right?
You got to do what's right.
For management, Scottie Pippen's got to do what's right, too.
That's what I'm saying. Both sides are at fault, but I would put more blame on management for not adjusting properly.
Can you imagine, let's say, who's a good comparison here? Let's use the Lakers, for instance, right? LeBron James is our Michael Jordan. Anthony Davis is our Scottie Pippen. Is that a fair?
LeBron James is our Michael Jordan. Anthony Davis is Scottie Pippen.
Closest, probably the closest we have.
That's fine.
If Anthony Davis chose, knowing he was injured, chose not to get a surgery until October because he didn't want his summer to be messed up. That's a quote from Scottie Pippen. We would kill him. Like, we would eviscerate him. I actually think, and you'll see in a couple episodes what I'm talking about even more, I actually think history is remarkably kind to Scottie Pippen for some of the things that he pulled.
I'm sure.
Including this,
because he
delaying
hung his team out to dry,
delaying surgery for 4 months
when he could have had it taken care of and been ready
in June, basically right after the season was over. He would have been ready to go.
Most players would just do that.
Yes, but he literally says he didn't want his summer to be. He didn't even have a good reason. He said, "Didn't want my summer to be messed up, and I was trying to stick it to the team." He says that. That's a quote. We would eviscerate anyone who did that today. It would be the first line in every story that was written about them moving forward.
But that whole thing was unavoidable if you just restructured his contract.
Maybe.
Unavoidable.
Or
you give him more money, you give him a better deal, he gets surgery in the summer, and that could be a contingent in the contract.
I'm waiting for a couple more episodes because there's more, and I don't want
your tongue.
I don't want to spoil it for you.
Sitting right now.
I don't want to spoil it for you, but I think you might change your tune a little.
Feel free to say, "Hey, I told you so." Just feel free to say that. This is where I'm at right now. All right, I'm excited to watch the other 2 episodes tonight. We'll get off The Last Dance and further conversations. And we'll talk more Nebraska football next with Brady Oltmans. He's Nebraska football and recruiting for Hail Varsity. We'll then get into some talk about Michigan and their upcoming season. I have a bold prediction on them.
Okay.
You may be like, what?
Okay.
We'll do the sports cleanup. We'll also talk Michigan football with an expert out in Michigan. But Brady Oltmans up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, 590 ESPN Radio, live on Twitter, live on YouTube, the Hail Varsity Radio, Hurrdat Sports YouTube pages, starting at 9 o'clock. We'll be on KFOR in Lincoln alongside Roger Dula, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Happy to be joined by Brady Oltmans at this time. Brady is Nebraska football and recruiting for Hail Varsity at Brady Oltmans on Twitter. Brady, good morning.
Morning, fellas. How we doing?
Good to have you here. We are always, when it's raining outside, it gets a little dicey with our wireless connection. So if you haven't seen us yet, that's why. It's not because we don't like you. It's because it's just because of the weather. We blame Mother Nature here.
Oh, trust me, with the dog, I blame Mother Nature plenty for all the things that we got to do. So I totally get it.
Hey, Brady, we had we'll start here. Big recruiting news yesterday in regards to Preston Tamua, 2024's number one player in Hawaii, committed to Nebraska. I was thinking about this after our conversation with Sam McKewon at the top of the hour. If it weren't for Donovan Raiola, does a kid like Preston sign with Nebraska?
Not Preston, and I don't think a lot of kids of his ilk would. There's something to be said for the Polynesian roots, and there's something to be said for those West Coast ties that Donovan Raiola has. And it's something he recruits that area. He recruits California, Hawaii, Utah really well because of his association there and his family legacy there. plus, there's also something to be said for just the familial bonds that Raiola has with the offensive linemen. I mean, you ask every single offensive lineman on Nebraska's team, they'll stand up and they'll shout to the rooftops about Donovan Raiola and how much they love playing for him. So at a certain point, you've kind of got to recognize that and say, well, if the current players like him and then they're able to get some big recruits in, Preston obviously is a big one, a big 4-star coming in from Hawaii, one of the top interior offensive linemen in the country in 2024, then there's something to be said for that. And it certainly seems like he and Raiola is going to have a lot more support within the coaching staff now, considering that Satterfield and Rule all have offensive line coaching experience. So the offensive line is certainly going to be a little bit more of a point of emphasis within the coaching staff this year. And then, I think it's just a testament to Raiola and the connections and the way that he relates to players that they're able to get guys like this.
Brady, I'm curious. As Andrew said, we were talking to Sam McKewon earlier, and he kind of threw me off for a loop a little bit. He mentioned a guy as who he viewed as the highest upside player in this class. And I'll tell you who he said in a minute, but I'm curious, who do you look at in this class and say that guy's got the highest upside?
In 2024, I'll go with my gut because I imagine I'll probably think, and the 5 names will come to mind, but Braylon Prudy from Shadow Creek in Texas is probably the one that stands out. I mean, he's still really raw, really. And the way that he moves, he's got a tenacity for it. He covers ground in the back end. He's able to step up on the line and run support really well on defense. He's the kind of camp guy, they evaluated him on film fine, but he really stood out in person and showed coaches what he could do in person. So that's, I think, for all those reasons, and he's a name that you didn't really catch on to. He wasn't a big name recruit coming into it. So for all those reasons, I think he's the one that has a high upside.
Do you want to follow up with?
Yeah. So I was curious, what do you think about the upside of Daniel Kalen? Because that's who Sam said, and I'll be honest, it caught me off guard.
No, he's got tremendous upside. It's one of those things where I think you're already seeing the college potential in Danny just from over the last couple of months. Nebraska wanted him, and then the old story. Dylan Raiola decommits from Ohio State, opens back up, and then Nebraska goes after Dylan. Danny had the mental awareness and the composure to say, okay, I understand. I'm going to go through my thing. I'm going to do my thing, and we're going to work. We're going to see this thing through. And then things obviously worked out the way they worked out. And then he's all in on Nebraska, gets in there, and then starts peer recruiting everybody. He was big in Preston Ta'amua as well. So that stands out. Plus, you couple in he was kind of, I don't know if you want to call him a fringe guy, but he was one of those outside guys that just got into the Elite 11. And then by the end of the competition, he is Elite 11. I mean, you're already seeing just give him an opportunity and he's going to make the most of it kind of thing. And I think that kind of mindset and that mentality is definitely going to, that could pay off big time in college football for him.
Talking about contributions here, Brady, what do you think is the biggest contribution a player can make to a team? Would you say it's results, leadership, or just being the ultimate teammate? And then follow up with it on who you think fits the bill for that quality this season.
I think it might come from the more coaching angle, just because I've heard a lot of coaches speak recently in the Texas High School Coaches Associate coaching school is going on right now. And I've got my feelers in with all the media people down there since I wasn't able to go this year. So I've been pounding my brain on it. But I think the biggest contribution you can make is kind of detached from results. And it's just simply results within the team. It is just simply pushing teammates, and it is simply lifting the rest of the team up. You don't even have to play really to be, one of the best guys. You just have to be able to push the starters or push the big snap guys and make them better through your contributions in practice to raise and elevate their game, which in turn elevates the team's game. The one name that I think would fall in line with that, and I think it might not be one-to-one because he might actually get some big snaps this fall, is Nash Natch Hutchmacher. And you think about it, this spring was really interesting on the defensive line, like it wasn't what it's going to be. They played without Ty Robinson, and Stephen Wynn is gone, transferred out to Ole Miss. So it's going to look a little bit different, but Nash kind of grew into a little bit of a leadership role. He talked about growing into it with Blaze Gunnerson, and then Ty's got big snaps. So he brings some veteran qualities to that defensive line. Nash is kind of learning along with him and matching that. Plus they've got all those young pups on the defensive line that Nash talked very highly about, but also said that the best thing that he can do is just push them to be better. And then in direct, 1v1 snaps, they're pushing the offensive line to be better. And, all of us both know the offensive line improves, the defensive line improves, and that's going to do wonders for your team. So, call it Monday morning, if you will, if you don't like the answer, but those are the ones that stand out to me right now.
Brady, I'm curious, kind of taking that answer in the scope of recruiting, how do you think this staff, because I think the staff values the same things that you're talking about right now. How do you think they evaluate that when they're looking at high school kids? Because that's a lot of stuff that just doesn't really show up necessarily in camps or on tape. How do you think they go about that? That seems like maybe the trickier part of the equation than finding guys that can play.
Yeah, it's a really intensive process, and I think it's one of those things that doesn't get noticed enough in the recruiting process. I think sometimes people boil it down to somebody's huddle page got linked to them, and then they watched a couple of films and they said, we got to offer this kid, or they see him one good day in camp, and then they think, all right, we got to full blitz get this kid. They stand out. If they stand out, present the physical intangibles, they're going to go after them, or they're going to pop up on the radar. But the coaching staff does their due diligence in talking with the kid, trying to figure out their mental game, if their personality is a good fit for the team. And then they call up the coaches and talk with the family, especially, and get a better sense of idea for the kid. Because like Matt Rule talked about, I guess it would have been last December, January, they want to get Nebraska guys, and they want to get people who fit what the University of Nebraska wants to be. And it's detrimental to the locker room if you're going to get a kid that's toxic to it. So they want to make sure that not only can they play on the field, they're going to be able to perform in the classroom, in the locker room, and help lift each other up. So it's a really intensive way. The coaching staff, and there's a lot more that goes into recruiting than actually just throwing out the offer and bringing them onto campus. And I think that's one of the things, especially this coaching staff does well, is investing a lot of resources and making sure that the quality of the kid that they're offering is up to the standard that they want to bring onto the team.
Brady, I'll get you out of here on this. How much of a disadvantage are coaches at that get their players on campus late, like DeAndre Barnes, who closed up the high school football season just about a week ago? And how much of a disadvantage is that for players like Barnes to being behind everyone else? Or could you look at it as an advantage because he got game reps deep into the summer?
Oh man. Well, automatically you think that he's a couple steps behind just because that gap, snaps are important, but college snaps and high school snaps are completely different, But I think one thing that might help DeAndre out in this sense is he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He was that February late commit arrival and almost just kind of came to Nebraska by happenstance. Just Marcus Satterfield going out on the recruiting trail and talking to a coach that he knew from before. And by the end of the afternoon, they not only do they know the kid, but they got an offer out and they're pretty sure that he's going to come to Nebraska kind of thing. So all that coupled together, I think is going to help DeAndre. Plus, just physically, he's just a really impressive young man. So the growing pains are going to be there. They'll be there for every single high school kid making that leap. But that's what fall camp is for, I guess.
Brady, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. We'll talk again next week.
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
That's Brady Oltmans, Nebraska football and recruiting for Hail Varsity, at Brady Oltmans on Twitter. And you can sign up for Hail Varsity using the promo code AR for that monthly subscription. Check it out. Use my promo code, and that'll knock some change off of what's being requested when you sign up for the Hail Varsity magazine and online platform. Okay, we'll change gears. We'll talk Michigan football next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Slam! For the second time this year, the Macho Man clears them all, and it's 6-0 Red Sox.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. He's Ravi Lula. I'm Andrew Rogers. Live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Happy to have you with us. 590 ESPN Radio here in Omaha, now on KFOR in Lincoln, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. 888-638-4876 is the phone line. If you'd like to get involved, you can also send us a message via DM or get involved on the YouTube chat room, and we'll see your message there. Before we get into conversations about Michigan and Nebraska and the schedule breakdown as we further those talks, let's tell you about one very important group that has been just absolute dynamite for us. And maybe if you were playing with dynamite too close to your car, you may need to take it into Dingman's because they know how to fix things up. Dingman's, 4 great locations. They've been voted best of Omaha for over 20 years. And to top it all off, Darcy and their team yes, Dingman, Shane. I get it. I hear the ding.
Oh.
Darcy, yeah. Can I talk? Yeah, there it is. There it is. Maybe we'll. Well, now we will hit the ding because we got to take the car in. They're some of the best in the business because they give back to the community. This is something I love talking about. They have this give back program where if you take your car in and they work on it, instead of you walking out and donating, they donate to whoever you choose to donate to in regards to the 3 different charities that they have on the table. So a company that gives back to the community, one that's invested in the community, is one that we love to support. Go over to dingmans.com to schedule an estimate today. How many dings was that?
As many as he can.
Yeah, at least 10. I mean, he was just trying to count up as many times they were voted best in Omaha, right, Shane? All right. He doesn't talk now. He gets shy when we talk about Darcy.
Have you seen Breaking Bad?
I have seen Breaking Bad. Believe it or not,
he's like the Salamanca in the chair. He just communicates with the little bell.
Yep. That's Shane. Shane just communicates with the little bell. All right, let's get into this breakdown because this is an interesting matchup. Because I think Michigan's going to be really good this year. Not now.
Hot take.
Yeah,
whoa.
Right? Yeah.
Whoa.
Relax. No, when I say really good, I think they're going to win the national championship.
Oh, okay.
I think Michigan won't lose a game.
Okay.
And they will go all the way, and either J.J. McCarthy or Blake Corum will win the Heisman Trophy.
Okay.
Now, the reason I think that is, they've made tremendous strides forward from 2020 till now. Now, under Jim Harbaugh, they are, I think it's like 25-3 since the pandemic, since they had the wake-up call after the loss to Penn State back in 2020. Now, Harbaugh may not be the most successful coach because of his overall record in college football, but if you look over the last couple of seasons, he's in the top 3. Yes. And there's a reason for that, because you have success against Ohio State, it leads you into the college football playoff, and here you are with all these things. Now, when I say they've made tremendous strides forward, if you look back in 2020, they were 10th in the Big Ten in run defense, and they were 11th in rushing offense.
Yes.
2021, they were 1st in rushing offense and 5th in run defense. Terrific because of where they were the year before.
Yes.
2022, number 1 in rush defense, number 1 in rushing offense. And I'm pretty sure they can replicate that again this year. And the reason I'm sure of that is because of the work they've done in the portal to rework the line, to get veterans back on the line. They have returners on their O-line. Their defensive line is going to be just as strong. And if you look across the top teams in college football, next to USC and Caleb Williams, who is the team that has their quarterback returning? It's Michigan.
It is.
J.J. McCarthy. Is he going to take as big of a leap as I'm projecting him to? That's the $1 million question.
So that's where I have a little bit of a hesitation.
And that's fine. A lot of people have the same hesitation, but everything that I've heard is he's taken great strides in the offseason, which makes me believe that this is a team that I think will go undefeated this year.
Yeah, so I think everything you've said is justifiable, right? I don't think you're out on a huge limb there. You're right. The offensive line, they return 3 starters. They bring in 3 guys from the Pac-12 through the portal, a couple of Stanford guys and an Arizona State guy. You got Chris Jenkins on that D-line, who's expected to be a really high NFL draft pick. Obviously,
very deep and experienced.
Yeah, really
in
good
the interior.
In the linebacker core as well. Obviously, Ernest Hausman transferring
remember
from
that guy?
Nebraska to Michigan. I don't know if he's going to start right away, but he's going to be a contributor.
Michael Barrett, Junior Colson.
You've got a nice secondary back there as well, although there's probably some questions there. They've got a couple of guys converted from wide receiver to corner.
Yeah, Maureen Walker, that's going to be an interesting one, because I don't know how much that flip
they love his potential, but he did struggle a little in the spring game. So that's the biggest question on the
from
team.
Offense to defense is a lot more difficult in college than it is at any other level.
So that corner spot is probably the one place where you're like, I'm not totally sure here. That's the one place they don't have a good answer. And maybe
outside of Will Johnson, who will be a Sunday
right,
player.
but on the other side, the other starting opposite of him. And then maybe wide receiver. You don't necessarily.
That's a room where I'm a little shaky on too.
Yeah, you've got some options there, but maybe you're not in love with a couple of those guys that not necessarily game breakers, right? You have Schoonmaker at tight end go to the NFL, but they've got
Colston Loveland,
and then AJ Barnes, I think his name is AJ Barner is a true freshman coming, or no, he's the transfer from Indiana coming in at tight end as well. So they'll be able to do some double tight end stuff with that run game. So they've got a lot of answers and not a ton of questions, right? So I totally understand where you're coming from. The question that I have that I think is going to determine whether you're right or whether they struggle to get over the hump again is, what is J.J. McCarthy actually going to be? If he's the J.J. McCarthy from last year, that's probably not enough.
Correct.
That's probably not enough to win the national title. Is it enough to go undefeated through the regular season? Maybe.
Right.
They could probably pull that off again because you got Edwards and Corum in the backfield and a lot of those other parts that we were talking about, right? And he was good last year. Don't get me wrong. J.J. McCarthy was good last year.
But you need growth in order to be great.
You need him to be a Heisman-level type player to probably get you over the finish line there.
That or Blake Corum and Edwards really have to carry the weight if J.J. McCarthy stays a little more stagnant. He could still take a step up.
You still need him to take a step up.
Right. But if he doesn't take as big of a leap, you need your running backs to carry that weight now.
So, and here's the other thing that I'm a little bit unsure about with Michigan and how the offense is going to look, right? Because let's say McCarthy does take a step forward, but maybe let's say it's not a Heisman step forward. Let's say it's clear-cut all Big Ten. Let's say he's clear-cut the best quarterback in the Big Ten, right? That's a step forward. It's not the leap that we're talking about. If he's all Big Ten good, but not Heisman good, where do you find the balance of, hey, we've got these two great running backs in Corum and Edwards. Corum 1,400 yards before getting injured. Edwards almost 1,000 anyway as the backup and then primary starter for the last few games. How do you balance, hey, this is probably the strength of our team is the running game and the offensive line and Corum and Edwards versus, hey, we've got this guy who probably wants the ball in his hands more. If he's made that leap, quarterbacks want the ball in their hands. They want to be determining the outcomes of games. He probably wants to showcase, hey, look at all these things. I fixed it. I can throw the deep ball now accurately and consistently because that was the big bugaboo. It's like, hey, let's make him beat us over the top, right? That was kind of the question. He obviously had the 2 pick sixes against TCU in the semifinal that cost him the game. Pure and simple. That cost him the game. How much is he going to want the ball? How much are they going to feel obligated to put the ball in his hands versus playing to what is probably the strength of that team? Because for me, the national championship formula for Michigan is to pound the rock the way they have in the past, but still have J.J. McCarthy as their ace in the hole, who can do all the things that you need a Heisman-level quarterback to do, that you need a national championship-level quarterback to do, but he doesn't have to do them all the time. That's the difference between like a Caleb Williams and potentially what J.J. McCarthy could be for Michigan, right? Caleb Williams has to do Caleb Williams stuff all the time. That is the only option. That's frankly the only option for all the Lincoln Riley offenses, right? To me, that is what also sometimes limits them because you're counting on one guy to do everything all the time. Michigan, if J.J. McCarthy makes the leap and still has their foundation of Corum and Edwards and that offensive line, you can survive an off game. You can survive a game where maybe J.J. McCarthy isn't up to his best, or maybe the defense is giving him fits and they're taking him away. You have another card to play. That, to me, is the recipe for a potential national championship in Ann Arbor. The question is, can you keep everybody in that offensive backfield happy enough for that to work? Because I think you don't want J.J. McCarthy throwing 40 times a game.
And I'm with you there. So I think J.J. McCarthy just has to be okay with his role. He knows the role is going to be majority running the football more than throwing.
So that's the key, right?
What Michigan really needs to look at is old tape of Nebraska football.
Sure.
And say, this is what we're going for.
Yeah.
We're going for a team that's going to pound the rock. And everyone knows we're going to pound the rock, but we're still going to be better than everybody else. And our quarterback is still going to make the play that needs to happen in order for us to extend drives, get points on the board, things of that nature. They're going to be solid on defense. Yep. They'll be good there. They just really need to kind of mold themselves around what Nebraska did really well back in the 90s. That's like really that's the quarterback I want to see out of JJ McCarthy. I want him to be good enough to be talked about as an impact player, but he doesn't have to be Caleb Williams because that's not Michigan. Michigan is not USC when it comes to one player tells the whole story.
Well, and frankly, that's tough. It's tough to win a national championship that way because everybody has an off game. I don't care how good you are, right? Everybody has an off game. A defense shows you a look that gives you trouble. So the key to me is, and this is kind of an awkward position for Michigan to be in, they need JJ McCarthy to take the leap without wanting or requiring the ball in his hands as much as someone who has taken that leap usually wants, right? So that's kind of a tricky spot and a kind of a fine line to walk if you're Michigan, is making sure that McCarthy is capable. You'd probably be comfortable in a different situation with him throwing the ball 40 times, but you need him to be okay throwing 20, 25 times a game. You almost need it to be those like pre-Tua Alabama teams where, and he's probably going to get a little bit involved in the QB run game. He's real mobile. So maybe not Jalen Hurts level of Alabama running the ball, but somewhere in that neighborhood of you're a run-first team, your quarterback's capable, he can add to the run game a little bit, but he can also beat you with his arm. That, to me, is the formula for success for Michigan, and I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off. That's my hesitancy, is, A, has McCarthy taken the leap that everybody seems to think he has? And if he has, is he going to be okay with his role not being the same as other quarterbacks of that caliber? That's kind of what's a decent example of it was Andrew Luck at Stanford. Andrew Luck didn't air it out the way somebody of his caliber probably could have wanted to, right? You still had your Toby Gerhardt, and then I think Bryce Love was at the end of his run there at Stanford, where they were a 2 tight end, run the football type of team, and Andrew Luck could do anything you wanted him to do, but didn't have to throw 50 times to be happy. That is going to be, and ironically enough, that was after the Harbaugh years, but his fingerprints were still all over those teams, right? If anybody can pull it off, maybe it is Harbaugh. Maybe it is somebody who's, again, just before his or just after his time ended there at Stanford. Right. But maybe that's something that he can implement here at Michigan. To me, that has to be the goal if you're trying to win a national title.
The over-under on the season is 10.5. The only game that they aren't favored in, according to ESPN FPI, which is the Football Power Index, is Ohio State, which tends to happen. I don't know if they were favored last year against Ohio State either.
I don't think so.
But
it's at home this year, so that's good for them.
And the other thing about Michigan, too, is they haven't had back-to-back undefeated regular seasons since 1947 and 48.
Yeah,
so
that's a minute.
It is a minute, but the way that they're trending, their trajectory is headed to beat history. So that's why I'll ride with that. Ravi's taking the more conservative approach.
I think over the 10.5 is a real good bet. I mean, that's to me, I feel real comfortable there. And if you look at their schedule, really the toughest.
Just one loss.
Well, at Penn State is pretty much.
That's a tough game.
That's the only tough road game, really. Because besides that, they're at Maryland, they're at Michigan State.
At Minnesota could be a little tougher.
I think Minnesota's probably a little bit down this year. But they get Ohio State at home. They have to go at Michigan State, at Penn State, at Maryland. Those outside of at Penn State, those aren't brutal.
At Penn State is the harder game.
They're obviously,
and I think that's majority of predictions have them losing that game if they are to lose a game.
Yes, if they're going to lose a game outside of Ohio State, it's probably that at Penn State game. Obviously, they come to Nebraska as well, but 10.5 looks like a pretty safe number to me. Obviously, it's a high number, but judging what they bring back, I think it's 6 starters on each side of the ball. We mentioned how they filled in some of those gaps on the offensive line as well. You have to feel pretty good that I don't think they're taking 2 losses this year. I really don't. So the 10.5 number looks good. I don't want to make it seem like I'm not high on Michigan.
And you're no, but when I say you're conservative, I'm at national championship. Yes. You're one step below.
I'm at like Big Ten,
you're college football
semifinal.
Yeah, you're college football playoff.
I don't know, because that's where they're at to me as a team. That is their kind of standard.
I think calling that conservative is right.
Well, and that's a great place for Michigan to be as a program, right? Because not that long ago we talked about this. 2020, they're like, is Harbaugh the guy? Are we still doing this? And all of a sudden, boom, it turns around.
Were they like 4?
2 and 4. They were 2 and 4 in the COVID year, which, and honestly, frankly, before that, it wasn't like this. 2020 was an outlier for sure.
Sure. They had some 10-3 seasons in there.
But they hadn't lost fewer than 3 games until 2021. They had at least 3 losses every year under Jim Harbaugh until 2021. And then they go 12-2. Last year they go 13-1. So they've brought themselves up to the point of a program where, Big Ten title is the conservative view of what they can be. The question to me, as I mentioned, how big is the leap that McCarthy took? And how do you balance a quarterback making that leap versus kind of sticking to the identity of your football program, which is a run-first, hard-nosed, kind of what Jim Harbaugh's always coached, right? That's every Jim Harbaugh team has been like that. Run-first, defensive-minded. I don't want to say conservative, but just an older school version of football. Then it's a very Michigan football style, right? It's a very,
it works.
It does. It's a very like pre-Lane Kiffin Alabama football style, right? Run the ball, play good defense. Your quarterback can make some plays, but he doesn't have to carry the whole game on his shoulders. It's going to be really, really interesting to me to see how that plays out, because this is the first time that Michigan has had a quarterback of this quality, certainly under Harbaugh, and you might even be able to go further back than that. J.J. McCarthy, incredibly highly touted coming out of high school. He was a huge get for Michigan. This is kind of the first.
They moved on from McNamara to lock in McCarthy.
Because McCarthy, they believed in him so much, made him the full-time starter. And McNamara took them to the college football playoff. Like, don't forget that. This wasn't an easy thing to move on from, right? This is a guy that took you a place you hadn't been or even sniffed really for a very long time. And they moved on from him in favor of McCarthy. This is the first time Michigan has had a quarterback on the level of what the Ohio State quarterbacks have been pretty consistently. That's a big deal for Michigan. Does it change their identity? Does it change who they are? And what does that look like? That, to me, is the big question on whether they get over the hump or whether they kind of stay in the same range that they've been in.
Now, Dave chimes in on YouTube, adding in some of his thoughts. He doesn't think McCarthy needs to take a huge leap. The struggle at the end of last year for Michigan was loss of balance on the offense with an injured running back and another running back out. I hear what you're saying, and he kind of leans more toward that, well, in order for Michigan then to be successful is for the running backs to really carry the weight. So I'm with you there. Now, one thing he does have here is really hard to go away from Georgia as the title pick.
Sure, yeah.
Proven they could reload and coming off 2 straight. He said his surprise pick, and now he has surprise in quotes, and I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if there's like more to that or not, but he says his surprise pick or 2023's TCU would be Florida State. If that's taken in a literal sense, I don't know if I'd consider that a surprise pick with the way Florida State is trending right now.
Not in the same level of TCU, for sure.
But if he's using quotes like, hey, surprise because it's not Georgia Alabama, then State. I could see where he's coming from. So just kind of hard to
Florida
understand.
State is pretty consistently trending in the certainly in the top 10. Some people have them in that like 5-6 range. Obviously, you have Jordan Travis coming back for Florida State, who will probably be a Heisman contender next year if he stays healthy. They finally have their offensive line in order, which has been a huge problem for them in years past. They've got a running game in Trey Benson that they really, really like him. Jared Verse would have been a first-round edge rusher this year, comes back to Florida State, so that's a huge pickup for them. So I don't know that it's a sleeper in the sense that it's outside like the big four, right? That we've consistently seen over and over again.
Well, somebody from the ACC has to be back, and it's either them or Clemson.
Yeah, and I don't know if Clemson's that.
And guys, are we really just going to count out UNC too and Drake May? Drake May proved to be the guy. He's number 2 on all draft boards right now.
I've seen number 1 at a couple places
and some
because he's more stereotypical size than Caleb Williams is.
I don't know if UNC has the defense to keep up with.
That's the big question.
Any other team.
That's the big question.
I also don't want to discount the fact that they have Drake May.
Sure.
In a lot of cases, one quarterback, one person, one player can do everything for you to lead you somewhere.
So that, again, kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Michigan. Michigan doesn't have to be built that way, right? And so I'll be interested to see if they kind of fall into that, I'll call it a trap, quote unquote. It's not a trap for most teams. It's the only option for most teams is they have to rely on that guy.
Thanks, Lance.
They have to rely on one guy because they don't have everything else. Michigan is a incredibly complete football team. They have way more answers than questions, like I said before, and it's really, really interesting when all of a sudden you have a potentially really dynamic quarterback added into that equation. Because a lot of times with these very complete football teams, you don't have that quarterback who can do everything. I mean, even Georgia, for example, right? Stetson Bennett did have his limitations. First of all, being Hobbit-sized was one of them. The other ones were there were probably throws he couldn't really make. He wasn't that 5-star first-round level quarterback. Alabama was built that way for a long time, too, before they started getting those first-round quarterbacks. If Michigan can take that leap with that first-round quarterback and be built kind of like a Georgia and Alabama everywhere else, that is a game changer for them.
Does he have hairy feet, too?
He might. I haven't seen.
Oh, you haven't? You're not a feet guy?
No.
When we come back, we'll take a short break. We'll do the sports cleanup. We'll also continue and learn more about Michigan later on in the show when we talk to Anthony Broome. But sports cleanup first.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Things you wanted us to get to from the weekend, but we didn't.
Cleanup on aisle 6.
It's the Coffee and Cream Sports Cleanup on Hail Varsity Radio.
All right, let's do it. Sports cleanup time on Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Ravi Lula, Andrew Rogers. Is Wimbledon a forgotten about sporting event, at least here in the States?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who you are and kind of what you're into. I don't know. I think in the U.S., if there's not an American involved in these, I call them fringe sporting events, you know, your Tour de France is a really good example. Nobody in the U.S. cared about the Tour de France. Lance Armstrong comes along. We love the Tour de France. Lance Armstrong becomes disgraced and retires and whatever. We don't care about the Tour de France anymore, right?
What's in France? Oh, the Tour Day.
Yeah. Swimming. Michael Phelps is awesome. We love swimming. Michael Phelps retires. Nobody cares about swimming, right?
Now, that I think is a little different for me because I was a swimmer.
Sure.
So, like, if you are a fan of, you know,
yes, but in the general
then you watch. Like the Olympics, I think Olympic swimming is watched, Olympic track is watched. Outside of that,
yes.
Like if college swimming's on TV, not a lot of people are tuning into that. I'm with you there.
And so we're a very, are we good at this type culture for these fringe sporting events?
But I do believe in what you said about if there's Americans in it,
we will
watch.
We immediately care. If Americans are elite at something, we immediately start caring about it. It's the reason, like, soccer goes off and on in this country is like, oh, is the U.S. team any good? Is it not? Whatever.
Unless it's the World Cup.
Right.
Who knows
and
how
even
much soccer
then,
people are watching.
Even then, when the U.S. isn't involved in the World Cup, the viewings go down pretty dramatically in the U.S. at least.
And even Sam said it earlier. He was talking about when he was talking about the NBA that they really needed to have somebody around in that league to sell it.
Sure. Yeah.
It's 100 times fold for tennis.
Yes, absolutely. And so we're kind of in this transition. Federer kind of brought people in outside of just his country. Nadal the same way, and their rivalry, I think, brought people in. Djokovic, I don't think is as compelling to people. He's never been quite as beloved as Federer and Nadal were.
Now he's fantastic.
He's incredible.
Unbelievable.
Right? Yeah, he's I mean, those three guys are the three best tennis players of all time, and they all played at the same time. It's crazy.
Not Andy Roddick? Come on.
I loved Andy Roddick, but he was, you know what I compare him to? I compare him to, this is a bizarre reference, but back in like the 60s, 70s boxing, he was like Ken Norton, right? So you had Muhammad Ali, you had Joe Frazier, you had George Foreman, right? You had like the big three.
And then you had the guy outside looking in.
And then Ken Norton, who broke Muhammad Ali's jaw, by the way, like was an incredible boxer, just lived at the wrong time. If he had come along in the 60s, he probably would have been a foe to Sonny Liston. If he had come along in the 80s, he would have been the main foe to Larry Holmes. But instead, he's right in the golden era of boxing, and he's largely forgotten because he was just a little bit worse than those three guys. Andy Roddick's the exact same way to me. He had one of the best Wimbledon finals against Roger Federer of all time in like 2008 or 2009. I don't remember the exact year. It was right before the epic final between Federer and Nadal. But people forget about it because he was just a little bit worse than those three guys, which is not an insult. Those are, like I said, the three best guys of all time. But yesterday, we had this 20-year-old, Carlos Alcaraz, who is, his potential is off the charts.
What do you think some of those calls should have been like? I mean, let's get creative with it. Like, oh, what an escape from Alcaraz.
I have a hard time.
Slap some cuffs on him. Send him to Alcaraz.
Every time I type his name, I want to type Alcatraz, and it takes a like very conscious effort to me to be like
Alcaraz, the only place with a working printer. That's a Book of Eli joke. The obviously he knocked off Djokovic yesterday, and he's, like I said, he's 20 years old. I don't want to talk about like number of majors or anything like that, but he has the upside to be as good as anyone we've ever seen. He's basically the raw athleticism of Rafael Nadal and the touch and feel of Roger Federer in the same player. That is his upside. He's crazy talented. People in tennis have known about him for a while. But yesterday, I mean, he had won a U.S. Open last summer, but this is the first time he knocked off one of the guys. He knocked off Djokovic and did it in a pretty spectacular fashion. Especially, I don't know what reference I can put this in for people, but he lost the first set. He got his butt whooped in the first set. Like Alcaraz?
Yes. Like dramatically got whooped 6-1 in the first set.
I thought he only had one.
Got ripped in that first set. People were tweeting like, "Oh, guess the kid's not ready," all sorts of stuff.
And then all of a sudden he comes
back.
And
then he flips the switch. He wins a tie break to win the second set, which Djokovic hadn't lost a tie break at Wimbledon in a decade. A literal, actual decade. 2013.
Is that a long time?
And I think it was to like Nadal at the time.
Was he good?
He was pretty solid. Like Djokovic was 75-1 at Wimbledon when winning the first set.
Pretty nuts.
Now he's 75-2. Nadal was the first one. Alcaraz is the second one. Both Spaniards, by the way. I don't know if that means anything. But that's how good this kid is. I don't know if he'll be able to transcend Americans actually caring about him the way Federer kind of did. Federer kind of became an international type guy that people cared about. Not to the same level as like Agassi and Sampras and the Americans, but to a degree where people liked watching Roger Federer regardless of where they were from.
Alcaraz just needs to start dating somebody from the U.S. women's soccer team, and
we are in.
The states are involved.
I don't know if he's got that level of transcendence in terms of his mass appeal, but the talent is unquestioned. And it was, if you didn't watch it yesterday, it was a phenomenal match. It was super long. Some of those 5-set tennis matches last forever. I think it was just under 5 hours is what the runtime ended up being. But it was, if you like tennis, it was phenomenal to watch.
Now, yesterday, too, news coming out that DeAndre Hopkins expected to sign with the Tennessee Titans.
That's right.
Which is a big get for them. Actually, the place I felt he would best fit, I wanted to see him there over New England. Now, their title odds, I mean, dramatic change for the Titans. They went from plus 8,000 to win the Super Bowl to plus 8,000 after getting DeAndre Hopkins, or at least the expectation there. And now here's a funny stat too that was on ESPN this morning. So
I saw this. Yeah.
So with DeAndre Hopkins on the team, slot him in. He is now number 1 on the list in career receiving touchdowns, including playoffs. He has 72. That's out of Titans wide receivers and head coaches. And you're probably like, head coaches. Well, Mike Vrabel had previously had the most on the team.
Linebacker
receiving
Mike
touchdowns,
Vrabel, by the way.
including the playoffs before DeAndre Hopkins joined. So nice work there.
So they needed the help, is what you're saying.
By ESPN. It's something like that. Now, the question is, who's throwing him the football? Is it Tannehill? Is it Willis? Is it Levis? The guess is Tannehill, but let's remember, too, Tannehill's successful when he has a guy to throw the football to.
Was
when
A.J.
Brown was there, he was at least
better.
successful.
Yep.
With a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, you can find success in Ryan Tannehill. He won't be great. He won't be perfect.
You wonder how long, because I think drafting Will Levis kind of says maybe they're not sold on Malik Willis.
I think that's it. And outside of Malik Willis, he thinks, I guess the general population doesn't think what Malik Willis says about himself will ring true of him being the best quarterback there in the room. So contrary to what he says, Levis will probably be the 2.
I would guess, and you wonder how long it is, especially if they don't start off well, how long it is before people start clamoring they want to see Will Levis. You know, people said he had the best arm talent in the draft.
Yeah, but he's not overly accurate and hasn't been this summer.
No, and so you wonder, anytime you've got a new guy in the room, I mean, by the end of last year, people were clamoring for Malik Willis, and
they got him.
Yeah, not that it went terribly well, but that's kind of the MO when you've got a rookie quarterback is people want to see him, especially when the starter is not lighting the world on fire. And let's be honest, even at his best, Tannehill has never lit the world on fire, right? That's just not
pretty.
Yeah, it's never been pretty with Ryan Tannehill. So you wonder how long it's going to be before the calls for Will Levis start to ring. Now, especially now that you have a real weapon. If the offense isn't clicking the way people want it to, you kind of have to look at the guy behind center.
And DeAndre Hopkins thrives when he's really the only weapon there. And they could use Treylon Burks kind of like Will Fuller was used in Houston. So if Treylon Burks can take a huge step forward, that would be great for Tennessee. Now, a local news here, knuckleballer Matt Waldron recalled by San Diego. So the West Side product is back in the system. The Suns get some depth at the big man position. I kind of alluded to that with Bull. They let go of Cameron Payne. They got some picks back too. I don't
know about that one. Cameron Payne was pretty good for them.
Yeah.
They might need a little help at backup point guard. I don't know.
That is the sports cleanup. Before we go to break, I'll tell you about Dyer Law, Dyer, D-Y-E-R Law, 402-393-7529. Give them a call. They'll provide you a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. If you've been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with that helping hand. That's Dyer, D-Y-E-R.law. Michigan football up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Takes the snap rather, is going to fire towards the end zone, up, and Colston Loveland's got it as he rolls over the goal line into the end zone. Touchdown. And we'll hand it off to Donovan Edwards. Makes a good cut in the backfield. Now back towards the middle of the field, inside the 10, runs through a tackler to the goal line. Donovan Edwards, touchdown.
Welcome back as we wind this thing down on a Monday. It's Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. If that cup of joe is getting a little weak, we'll make sure to refill that tomorrow morning as we are on from 7 to 10 every day on 590 ESPN in Omaha. We are live on Twitter, live on YouTube, the Hurrdat Sports and Hail Varsity Radio YouTube pages, that is. You can chime in at any point on those platforms, or you could give us a call, the phone 888-638-4876. I almost just gave my phone number out. I just had to force a habit when I'm talking about phone numbers because I feel like I'm leaving a voicemail.
That'd be a little bit funny if you just like
give us a call, blah, 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 blah. That's mine.
Shoot.
Mine. Have you ever given out a phone number on air?
Not mine.
So here's a funny story for everybody out there. I used to board up in St. Louis. I felt really bad about this. Shane, maybe this is more in your wheelhouse, but the buttons would stick sometimes on our board.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'd have to really push down a couple of times to turn off one of the microphones. And so when you're moving super fast, you have breaks, you're trying to get the open ready for the next segment, you're pulling things across. Everything was on the fly, nothing was preloaded. And so I had thought that all the mics were off. And I'm not listening in studio to see if things are coming through the speakers.
Sure.
If they are, then everything's off. If they aren't and it's silent, then obviously something's still on.
Yeah.
And one of the co-hosts at the time, the former Blues hockey player, we were talking to, I can't remember if we were talking to one of his former teammates or a coach. And he passed along the number to me because I had to call. And sure enough, his mic was the one that was still on, and that number went out over the air. So not one of my brightest moments. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. Has that ever happened to you, Shane?
Not for a phone number. I mean, I've left the mic on a couple times, and people have said some stuff. So, but I mean, it happens.
You're dang right.
I love how he had to justify his "it happens" because he knew it was about him. But hey, I feel for you.
Sometimes that could be really bad, but sometimes it's I don't know. Giving out the phone number's got to be really bad though, because he's probably got to change his number. I mean, he's a relatively famous guy.
That was
Yeah,
that was a little rough.
That's rough.
That was hard to recover from.
Yeah. That's hard.
I don't know. I still haven't, obviously. It stems from a deeper place.
Still thinking about it.
We're awaiting Anthony Broome on 3 reporter on the Wolverine.com. We'll see if he can take some time and stop by. Going back to StreamYard here quickly, when Dave was talking about McCarthy, and then we started talking a little bit about the other ACC teams, he had asked UNC took a hit on the coaching staff too, right? And that is correct. They made some changes. They're not like from a coordinator point of view and head coach, obviously, but some positional changes. Yes. And then he asked, and I laughed because, and I'll tell you why, does Miami bounce back in the ACC this year? And that question always makes me laugh because they always have the highest projection to do so and just never capitalize on it.
Yeah.
They just don't. They're not a team. They're not the team they used to be. And it's always like, oh, I think Miami's going to be really good this year again. And then they're a top 10 team in the nation and they don't look like it ever.
Yeah. Well, and it's especially with Cristobal going back. I think the hype last year was probably premature, but I don't know if it feels like Miami is just perpetually disappointing.
Well, let's change gears and talk Big Ten once again. Anthony Broome joins us now. Good morning.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you, Anthony. Anthony's on 3 reporter on the Wolverine.com, at Anthony T. Broome on Twitter. Okay, so we got really into these details, and I've made some I'll call it a bold claim, because if you take one step up on the staircase, calling Michigan a national champion could be considered bold to some people. That's what I think. And now I'm just kind of wanting to know, because of all the returning actioners, most importantly, the quarterback, everybody seems to have lost outside of Michigan. I know you're a homer, but what makes you believe in Michigan the most, that they're one of the more complete teams in college football and that this year could be the year of the national title?
Yeah, I mean, this is, if it's not this year, when for them, right? I think that's kind of the conversation that Michigan fans are having right now. And, they have guys on this team that have been factors for the 2021 Big Ten title, 2022 Big Ten title, 2 wins over Ohio State. It feels like the third part in a 3-part trilogy for this program right now. And I think they're as deep at every position as they've been under Jim Harbaugh. I think that they are as athletic, as talented as they've been at every position. They've got quality guys up and down the depth chart. They've hit the transfer portal well. So I feel like all of that work to augment their roster and, position themselves. And I like where they're at mentally right now too. I mean, there's no resting on their laurels. They know that they've kind of laid an egg in the last 2 college football playoffs. So there's an edge about them, and they're also, as talented as they've been under Jim Harbaugh. So they have a chance. They really do. I truly believe that.
Anthony, a big part of that equation is obviously J.J. McCarthy, full-time starter for the first time last year. Now he is back and the unquestioned starter. What type of jump do you think he has to make in order for Michigan to get over the hump of that national semifinal? Or do you think they can do that with him playing at basically the same level he did last year?
I think that if he plays the way that he did in the last, 3 or 4 games of last year, and you get a season and full of that, I think that's probably what the leap looks like. Last season, he's a true sophomore, starting college football games for the first time. And there were, it felt like there were some shackles on him early on, and then by necessity late in the year, Blake Corum goes down, and you need him to be a difference maker. And I thought that he answered the bell for the most part. There were some back-breaking turnovers in the TCU game. I don't know that he's going to put up, those types of video game-like numbers this year, but I think that he is going to be given a little more license to improvise within the offense. And I think that Michigan is out to utilize the talent it has, and its most talented player, regardless of having Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards or what have you on that offense, is at the quarterback position. So I mean, numbers-wise, I'm not sure what it will take, but, in those gotta-have-it moments, I think that McCarthy just needs to keep making strides there. He did really well at leading his team back a few times last season. TCU game, it was just a little too late. But he is. As a junior, I expect him to take that step and position themselves to win that big prize.
Anthony, what's a bigger concern for 2023? Would you say the pass rush or explosive big chunk plays?
Oh, I would say I think their pass rush is going to wind up being pretty good. So I would say the chunk plays, just because that wide receiver, that's the one. It really is the one position group on this team where I think they have a lot of okay pieces there. I think that the guys like Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson, Tyler Morris, those guys would all probably be pretty good number 2 wide receivers on any other school in the Big Ten, but they're kind of leading the way for Michigan here. And I think they have, skill and explosiveness there, but not a lot of it's proven. I think they're a little deeper from a pass rush perspective. So I have no doubt that they'll get production from those areas, but wide receiver to me would be a bigger question mark.
Anthony, in terms of expectations, is it the expectation around the program, both within and without up there in Ann Arbor, that it's national championship or bust, or what is, I guess, what's the vibe up there of what this season needs to be?
Yeah, I think right now everyone is, with the roster they have back, the way the schedule sets up for them, anything less than playing in that last game of the year in Houston, I think it would be a disappointment. And, it's hard to say national title or bust. You still have Georgia, who has its own share of question marks, I should say. There's always seemed to be that dark horse school that comes up out of the SEC as well to be in that picture. So it's hard to say title or bust, but I certainly think that it is Houston or bust. I think that's the way a lot of people are looking at it right now.
Anthony, I'll get you out of here on this. We got to see him thrive as a youngin in Lincoln. What does the program think of Ernest Hausman?
Yeah, we got our first look at him in the spring game, and he is quick and he is a disruptor, and he's the type of guy on that Michigan has kind of missed that linebacker. I won't say it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but to me, he looks like maybe the most athletic linebacker that they will have since, Devin Bush was there. So, again, he's going to compete for a starting role. I don't know that he'll get one, but I think he's going to play because he looked pretty darn good when we saw him in the spring. So, I guess shout out to the Cornhuskers for giving him a year of seasoning.
I guess you're welcome. Anthony, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. And, maybe closer to game time, we can get you back on.
Absolutely. Would love to.
That's Anthony Broome, On3 reporter on the Wolverine.com, at Anthony T. Broome on Twitter. Nice little jab.
The ironic thing is, with that quickness, how well he would have played in the 3-3-5.
That is true.
That's the horribly ironic thing about the whole thing.
But you know what? I would never knock him for wanting to go win a national championship right now.
No, have
the opportunity.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to Brandon Vogel tomorrow. Thunder Dan, who is a sports betting guy. And then we'll continue our schedule breakdowns with Illinois. They are next. So we'll continue Big Ten action. That'll do it today on the show. For Ravi Lula, I'm Andrew Rogers. We'll see you tomorrow.